I'm glad it's.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm just ignoring you.
I'm sure people have noticed it, but there is an echo on the mayor's mic.
Megan, can you hear me?
So
Yes.
I should.
Goes. Oh, come on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardstein.
You're welcome.
All right, good morning, everyone. We're working through some technical issues here. What is that going? Hang on. Could it be the monitor? Bear with us. We'll get this. All right, testing. It sounds like a mic is open. Or is it feedback from which two? City Council. I'm sitting here in council chambers with our council clerks, and we're working through the technology so that we can be in person starting next week. There's obviously a few glitches we're still working through, but our incredible technology team is chasing each and every one of those issues down. Keelan, please call the roll.
Morning. Ryan.
Here.
Hardesty.
Here.
Max.
Here.
Rubio.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by video and teleconference, and the city's made several avenues available to the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting's available to the public on the city's YouTube channel, eGov, PDX, www.portlandoregon.gov/video, and channel 30. The public may provide written testimony to council by emailing the council clerk at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. Email the council clerk for any other questions at councilclerk@portlandoregon.gov. That's for any questions other than testimony. With that, we'll hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum. Good morning.
Good morning. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions, reports, or the first readings of ordinance. The published council agenda at www.portland.gov/council/agenda contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the City Council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please be aware that all council meetings are recorded.
Thank you very much. First up is communications. Item number 316, the first individual, please, Keelan.
All right, sorry about that. Working through some technical difficulties. First up, we have request of Elizabeth Marquez Delgado to address council regarding youth voice, youth participatory budgeting.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Portland City Council. My name is Lisbeth Marquez Delgado, and I am serving on the Youth Consultant Committee for Youth Voice, Youth Vote, Participatory Budgeting, also known as YV Squared PB. As a youth consultant, I request the Portland City Council members to dedicate $2 million of its ARPA funds to the YV Squared PB project to fund a second participatory budgeting cycle in 2023 to 2024. I've lived in Southeast Portland, specifically in the David Douglas School District, my entire life. I see the diversity in my community and know that with it comes better ideas to move us forward, but needs a platform to do so. My current role as a college access mentor at David Douglas High School, my former high school, I serve youth by offering them support to achieve their professional and educational goals. From my direct experience working with students, I understand that youth have the potential to become leaders who strive to make a positive impact. Students have told me that they feel motivated to do something to help after the pandemic, which has brought hardship within our communities. Yet they face the barrier that they do not possess adequate guidance to seek out and take on leadership roles. Through YV² PB, youth are provided support and resources to allow us to flourish as leaders in our communities. We will be empowered as we collaborate with other youth leaders, as well as make meaningful connections within school systems and the local government that we do not otherwise have access to. This is a valuable experience for us to understand how government policy and nonprofits work. Additionally, civic engagement is not always something that can be taught, but something that needs to be experienced. This program provides a clear path for Portland youth to become involved within the local community. I believe the Portland City Council should fund this project because it is crucial for us to amplify community members' voices. It is important that everyone has an input on what changes they want to see and put them into action. Doing so in a collaborative environment will strengthen our community and cultivate relationships between us and our elected leaders. This will benefit Portland's future generations because current systems of government exclude youth from the process, even though youth are often the most impacted by decisions. With YV² PB, we are ensuring we are creating a lasting cycle of leadership development among youth. This project will prepare us for future roles in which we can hold power. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me and to consider what I have to say.
Thank you. We appreciate your being here today. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Elizabeth. I really appreciate you being here today. I am curious as to, you asked us for $2 million. What are you going to do with it?
This will go towards the second participatory budgeting cycle. So right now we are in the process of going through the first one. And I think that with $2 million, it will be able to fund another project in which we can help ameliorate any hardship that was caused by COVID-19.
And this first project, who is it funded by, the first phase?
I'm not sure. I will be able to get back to you on that question though.
Okay, thank you. Because I know that there's been a request for several years from the city to actually create a participatory budgeting process, but we have not moved forward on that request. So yeah, any information you can give me about your project, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next individual, please. Keelan, item number 317.
Request of Robert Butler to address council regarding Bureau of Transportation negligence. I don't believe Robert has joined us yet.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, sorry, there we go.
Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
Well, this is Robert Butler, native Portlander and resident of Portland. Well, Ukrainians are dying for freedom while liberals are killing freedom. So why is it that this city council is persecuting the Slavic community in this Division Street safety project? Well, it's just the tip of the iceberg, actually. Hidden below the surface is PBOT's evil partnership with TriMet, jointly driven by egomania, lies, and incompetence and deception. I will conclude these marks with the $5 million payoff to PBOT. Well, this unmerciful attack on the Slavic businesses between 103rd and 109th is the final steps of TriMet's partnership with PBOT to complete a much larger circle of crime. Step one, TriMet is dying to buy over $100 million of giant articulating diesel buses, longer than semi-trucks. Apparently, TriMet got bored with its light rail overkill. So TriMet can't wait until today's $1 million electric buses are as cheap as these $825,000 heat diesel guzzlers, good for 14 years of driving. Well, the easiest place to showcase these monsters is Division Street. TriMet then will drop $25 million of super diesels there. No, Division is TriMet's best operating bus line division. Next, TriMet wants its own private bus lane on Division for its 4 buses an hour. For this showcase, only a private eastbound lane is wanted. Westbound, well, the buses can mix with the traffic. So what happens next is that TriMet wants a full length center barrier so cars could no longer use the center safety lane for left turns to businesses on the other side. PBOT was the perfect partner for this scheme. PBOT already has an accident crisis between 112th and 147th to deal with. It's called Midway. So PBOT brushed off all the pleas of the businesses there for mercy and got 50% ODOT funding towards the $12 million Easterly Division Street project. TriMet project, $186 million. So here's the deal. PBOT extends its barrier for TriMet from 147th to 174th, takes all the street parking away for this bus-only lane. The benefit to the extension doesn't remotely justify the cost. Now for the climax. PBOT gets its 27 blocks, delivers its 27 blocks of unjustified median to TriMet and the barrier. The barrier will not reduce any serious injury accidents in that portion by even 1 a year. Then it wants to take the other end of the project that the Slavic community is on and do the same thing there so it doesn't look suspicious, kind of looks all the same. Well, now, there's no benefit to there at all, hardly. Less than 1 crash per year that's critical. So
All right,
besides,
thank you, sir.
Besides
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to speak to what the presenter spoke to, but I want to remind all my colleagues that I sent you the federal investigation into PBOT's allegations of racial discrimination against the Slavic community, and PBOT was found to, in fact, have engaged significantly in community engagement, and there was no finding of any kind of discrimination in this process at all. And as you know, this division project has been underway for quite some time and it's almost done. And I just found it offensive when people come and accuse a city bureau of actually getting paid off by another governmental entity. I am proud of the work that's been done on division project, and we all will celebrate a safer division because of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next individual, please, Keelan, item number 318.
Request of Fatima Magamadova to address council regarding Division Street project safety issues.
Good morning.
It doesn't, she's not here. Okay, it doesn't look like Fatima has joined us.
All right, we'll move on to the next individual, please. Item number 319.
Request of Rebecca Kreitzer to address council regarding foie gras sales ban.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, commissioners and Mayor Wheeler. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, and thank you for your service to the city. My name is Rebecca Kreitzer, and I'm here today to talk to you about the proposed foie gras sales ban. It is my understanding that the city has been considering this sales ban since last year, or since at least early this year. However, the proposed foie gras sales ban has not been introduced for consideration, and I confess I am surprised by this, especially in light of ample community and industry support. Currently, over 70 Portland restaurants have signed their support for the proposed foie gras sales ban. Additionally, the community has consistently demonstrated their support for the proposed ban by speaking at communication sessions such as these, calling and emailing the commissioners, and engaging on social media. I have no doubt the community will continue to demonstrate their support of the proposed foie gras sales ban. As a reminder, foie gras is one of the most inhumane industry practices. The birds are force-fed multiple times a day via a metal or plastic 10 to 12-inch tube. The practice is also heavily tied to significant environmental harms, including water contamination. In the strongest terms possible, I encourage this council to take up the proposed foie gras sales ban and to pass it into law. This will ensure that Portland does not support the inhumane practices of the foie gras industry. This action is also consistent with bans already in place in other jurisdictions, including New York City, California, the UK, Argentina, and even cities in France where foie gras originates from, such as Lyon, among many other cities and countries. Perhaps most importantly, taking up this ban will ensure this council is passing legislation that is important to the people of Portland. It is time for Portland to be free of foie gras, and I urge the council to ban the sale of foie gras in Portland. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Keelan's informed me that the individual for item 318 has arrived.
Request of Fatima Magamadova to address council regarding Division Street project safety issues.
Good morning.
Good morning, honorable members of City Council. My name is Fatima Magamadova. I'm the owner of Roman Russian food store representing Slavic group from 103rd to 110th Avenue on Division Street. The Slavic community is defined as those from the former Soviet Union. It is the largest refugee-based community in Oregon. According to Portland State University research, Slavic community is a community of color for facing similar forms of discrimination and exclusion. The problem we're facing as a community of color is that we are invisible. No government database reports on the experiences of the Slavic community. No administrative database does such reporting either. Nothing exists in the public arena about Slavic community. We face barriers to parity and to equity. On February 28, 2022, our Division Street Slavic group filed discrimination complaint against PBOT for violating our civil rights. PBOT officially denied our complaint by a prejudice investigation. Following is outline of our complaint. There was an act of disparate impact resulting in unjustified adverse effect that negatively affected minority Slavic group without any substantial justification. A predominantly minority community was excluded from being officially informed and participated in expansion of Division Street project and became a subject to a harsher treatment than a neighboring non-Slavic community. PBOT failed to communicate meaningfully with Slavic group that would be affected or would be encountered by the project activities. PBOT failed to provide as appropriate non-discriminatory services or any solutions. PBOT failed to solicit feedback from our Slavic group on our division corridor. What we've been told that they will only do little tweaking. PBOT failed to outreach to a corridor from 103 to 112. As you can see, this is freeway. This is what was given to Slavic media, where I'm an anchor, and that's what outreach PBOT did. Here's the freeway, and there's a 80th to freeway, and 112 to 174. This is where Roman Russian food store. We did not have any outreach. This is what has been given to all the media, all the outreach provided. I hope that you all saw that our corridor was not included. Finally, everything that PBOT did for our group was too late for equity and relief. Our Slavic group was once again discriminated by PBOT rejecting our civil rights. Remaining invisible in public policy is no longer adequate. We insist City Council to change this deplorable exclusion of our Slavic community group. We implore you to stop this discriminatory violation for our civil rights. requesting once again to keep access to our business westerly of Division Street and keep existing curb parking for our freight deliveries and customers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the last individual today for communications, Keelan, item number 320, please.
Request of Elizabeth Allen to address council regarding support for mass homeless shelters and criminalized public homelessness.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yeah, we hear you, Elizabeth. You're good to go.
Okay, so I'm hearing that that's against like a constitutional right. So I was wondering if you guys instead, if you guys maybe have a date to lift some COVID restrictions off of current shelters that we already have. I'm hearing from some shelter people who run the homeless shelters that once those are lifted, they'll be able to get a significant amount of people who are on the streets off of the streets. And I'm concerned with this because honestly, the streets are kind of scary. With compassion to the houseless people, like it kind of sucks. I can't take my kids outside. My daughter's bus stop is 3 minutes away from the house for school every day. I won't let her walk by herself when she's 11, and she's kind of embarrassed of that. But there's a camp right around the corner, and like a lot of people are having mental health crises. It's becoming a little dangerous for everybody else, along with the crime and stuff in neighborhoods. And I do have compassion for that, but I'm wondering if there's any way we could utilize some of the services we already have, or if you have a date planned to kind of like make that a thing so we can alleviate some of the, camps and stuff that are out there. I'm hearing a lot of people want to be in shelters, but they can't get into them due to restrictions. And I know we've lifted them a lot of other places. Possibly, I heard there could be some legal problems with that, exposing people to COVID or whatnot if you lift the restrictions all at once, but maybe filtration systems. I mean, really, you guys are the professionals. I'm just kind of hoping that there'll be some sort of a resolution soon. I'd love to take my kids out, in public transportation and to parades and to do things this summer without having to worry about, the problems we often run into out there. And that's all. I'm done with my time.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And we appreciate you being here and testifying and sharing your concerns. And you're obviously not alone. A lot of people are very, very concerned about public safety, about finding humane alternatives to people living on the streets, about the livability conditions in the city. And the good news is we are working hard to address those issues. I'll actually be releasing my executive budget next week. And so you'll hear more about focused programming to address exactly the issues that you just mentioned. So thanks for taking the time to be here today. We really appreciate your perspective. Keelan, with that, have any items been pulled off the consent agenda?
No, we've received no requests.
All right,
Mayor,
and
just
colleague, Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so you know that Echo is back.
Yeah, we know it too. We're troubleshooting it as we do, and I apologize for that. Please call the roll on the consent agenda.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Max.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
The consent agenda is adopted. And I just want to say it's great being here in chamber with Keelan and Megan. And we're all working with the technology folks here trying to get everything sorted out. So thank you for bearing with us. We'll move to the first time certain item. And that is item number 321, please.
Accept the Technology Oversight Committee quarterly report.
Colleagues, I am pleased to introduce this report by the Technology Oversight Committee, which is comprised of 5 members of the public, each selected by a different commissioner. The committee is tasked with providing oversight on the city's technology-based projects. The TOC is currently overseeing the Office 365 project, the body-worn cameras project, of course, the record management system, the RMS. Here to present the report are Ethan Sermo from the Office of Management and Finance. Jeff Baer is here, the Chief Technology Officer and Director of the Bureau of Technology Services. He'll be testing out our testimony platform this morning, as well as Wilfred Pinfold, a TOC member representing my office. Welcome, Ethan, Jeff, and Wilfred.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. It's great to be here. My name is Ethan Sermo. I work for the Office of Management and Finance on the communications team. This is a quarterly report of the Technology Oversight Committee for the first quarter of this year.
Echo is problematic, I think.
Jeff Baer, Portland's Chief Technology Officer and the Director of BTS, is actually there in person with you, so that's exciting. Once Jeff is finished, he will be presenting the committee report to you. Once Jeff is finished, you will hear from Wilfred Pinfold. He is Mayor Wheeler's representative on the committee, and he's going to present the opinion of the committee. We're currently overseeing 3 priority projects for the police, Office 365 project, the body-worn cameras project, and the records management system project. We also, over this past quarter, completed oversight of the integrated tax system project led by Revenue. So with that, I'll hand things over to Jeff.
Thank you, Ethan, for the introductions. And I suppose it's appropriate to present the TOC report in chambers here for the first run. So good morning, Mayor Wheeler. Good morning, City Council members. As Ethan noted, I'm Jeff Baer, your Director of the Bureau of Technology Services. And with me today is Will Pinfold, who represents Mayor Wheeler, your office on the Technology Oversight Committee. And Wilf and I are here to present the TOC quarterly report to Council covering the first quarter of 2022 and provide updates that are not necessarily reflected in the report to Council. And of course, we are always happy to answer any questions that you might have today.
I have a thought about the.
So the first project on the Council report is the Police Bureau's implementation of the Microsoft Office 365 product. They are currently on an older Microsoft email exchange server, and implementing Office 365 will move them to the same platform across the city's environment. During this quarter, we brought on a quality assurance firm, Case & Associates, and to provide their independent project assessment. Because the project is still in the discovery or in the research phase, it's not unusual to see the schedule in yellow as noted in the report. And this should change once we finalize the architectural design and the implementation schedule. And this is a very complex upgrade for the city, as we must maintain a high level of security around the criminal justice information requirements. The second project on the report is the body-worn camera project. And once the solution is identified, then the TOC will be provided a monthly project implementation report from the QA consultant, as well as updates from the project management team. And the final project on the quarterly report is the record management system upgrade to the Versadex vCloud solution. And although there's no timelines on that yet, as we are still in the process of identifying resources needed to start that project. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Wilf to provide his observations and insight on these different projects. Wilf?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. As I say, Wilf Pinfold here, I'm Mayor Wheeler's representative on Technology Oversight Committee. I think Jeff said it well. We were very happy with the work that happened on the integrated tax system that concluded in the last cycle and looks very good. I think we'll see an update on that one more time in the next 2 or 3 months. But I think we all feel very, very happy that was very well managed and ran through the system very well. The other projects are 365, the body-worn cameras and the record management. They're still in startup mode, as Jeff mentioned, and I think we're still looking to get the full engagement that we get once we bring on QA and activities. The 365 is a little ahead of the others, but they all look as if they're heading in the right direction. I have no concerns about them at this time. So I think this is a fairly light report from us, where that's a good thing. We very much like it when things are going well. So I'll finish there.
Thank you, Will. That completes our report, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Maps.
I want to invite our speakers to expand a little bit on Office 365. I'm glad to hear that you perceive that it's going well. Although when we looked at the report, I think there was some talk of unprecedented challenges. Frankly, I'm surprised that this migration is as complicated as it appears to be. I'd like to do some reality checking. Is the Office 365 project on track, and what are the risks of it going sideways?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Mapp. So I'll take the first question. And one of the complexities that we have is that we have what are called two different tenants in the city's network. And we've segmented that off purposely because of the criminal justice information that is transiting through the police network. And because of that, it causes a pretty significant complexity in trying to synchronize those two different tenants on the back end. And so that they can actually be on the same platform as the rest of the city employees and be able to provide information back and forth across those two tenants. So that's the complexity, and we're working very diligently. We've got some high-level Microsoft engineers on the project as well to work through those complexities. We're also in very good communications with the office or the Oregon State Police, who have actually done this as well. So just understanding those complexities, it's very difficult, but we think it's manageable as long as we get the architectural design correct, which we think we're on the right track. And Wolf, anything that you want to add to that as well?
I think that states it well. I think you're right to be concerned about the progress here. I don't, as I said, I think things are going well at the moment. I wouldn't expect it to be any different right now, but I think it is a challenging project. I think we've learned that from talking with the Microsoft team themselves, who themselves are uneasy about this. So let's keep a really close eye on it. I think we need to proceed carefully, and I think you're right to question us, and please continue that pathway as we get into this.
Thank you, Wilfred.
Commissioner Hardesty.
First, I want to thank the presenters for the information today. As always, there's a high level of confidence in the information that is shared by the Technology Oversight Committee because of the expertise of the volunteer members who serve on it. And it looks like over the next couple of years, you're going to be doing police, nothing but police almost. And that is a very good thing. I see it. My assumption is because we're going from no shareable data system to one that is used by most professional organizations and firms is the challenge in moving us from where we are now to the 365 system. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, I think that's an accurate statement and characterization of that. It's going to be, it'll be shareable across the two different tenants, as I described earlier. And it will be, and they'll have much more functionality because they'll have the complete Office 365 suite of products that's available to them.
Thank you. And my next question was really around the body cams. I see that in May, we're supposed to have some demonstrations. Is the Technology Oversight Committee members that are working on this project going to be able to participate in those demonstrations?
I don't know that we've gotten a schedule yet from the project manager over in police yet, but certainly we are there, and Wolf can speak to this as well. But I think they also want to be very much in part of that process.
As I would encourage that to be as well. I think it's, again, what I know is that we don't do a good job without your help when it comes to buying technology that can be integrated into other systems. So I will just end by saying I'm very grateful for the talented volunteers that continue to serve the city in this capacity. You are worth your weight in gold. Because again, you bring expertise that we just don't have in-house, and you're willing to actually do it as volunteers. So my appreciation to the team, and thank you so much for your report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, committee. Thank you, Jeff and Wilfred. It's good to see you. I actually want to ask a question about the third point that you're making, because I don't know what you're saying for sure. So everything seems to be aligned with the work that we're doing with the police bureau. But could you explain the third bullet that you were talking about, the records management, a little bit more to me and those tuning in?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Is this related to the scheduling of that project for resources?
I think when I hear records management, when I hear that right now, I think of records request, which I have trauma about since it takes up so much of our staff time. It seems to be the playbook for many people now is to just think that we have enough time as we're focusing on the crises in our city that we're supposed to constantly just do records requests. So I think I was triggered by that. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, the police record management system, those are.
So everything isn't about the police bureau, all three items?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the record management system that the police bureau has is for all the criminal investigations. And so they have like different record requests, or not record requests, but records that they have through traffic stops, investigations, those sort of things.
All right. So I didn't realize that all 3 points were connected to one bureau in the city. And now I'm getting that. I knew the first two were, but I thought the third one might have been going beyond. But is the Technology Oversight Committee a citywide view?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm glad we're drilling down here, but man, we have some issues in other bureaus and for the entire city as well. So your plate must be really full.
Yeah, in fact, as I think Wilf noted, that the integrated tax system, which is through the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services, that just rolled off. So, and there's more coming in up the pipeline too for consideration to be overseen by the Technology Oversight Committee.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I asked those very open questions because in the busyness of life, I just didn't track the third bullet point. And now I realize that it is connected to the bullet 1 and bullet 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Maps.
A quick question. Has the BTS begun convening the Technology Executive Steering Committee yet?
Yes, we held a kickoff meeting, I think in February, and we're in the midst of scheduling it out on a monthly basis. And then with the new incoming Chief Administrative Officer, want to work with him to make sure that we're aligned with his thoughts on that as well.
Great, I'm glad to hear it. Good job.
Very good. Colleagues, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Commissioner Hardesty moves. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Maps seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Thank you, Ethan, Jeff, and Wilfred. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Excellent work as always. Aye.
Maps.
Yeah, I just want to thank the Technology Oversight Committee for their very important work. I really appreciate these updates. I will be watching the rollout of Office 365 closely. I vote aye.
Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Bearer and Wilfred and the committee for this presentation and for bringing this report forward. I really appreciate the work on this report, and thanks again for all the time that to the committee members that they give in service to the city. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I always like the fact that the Technology Oversight Committee reports. You know what? We're struggling with the mic, so I'm just going to vote aye. Thank you for your hard work on this. The report is accepted. The next two items, colleagues, you will recall the first is a resolution, which we continued today. The second item is an ordinance. Why don't we go ahead and call them together? We'll vote separately. 322 and 323, please, Keelan.
Renew the Central East Side Industrial District Property Management License Fee for 10 years. And 323, authorize agreement for Central East Side Industrial.
Keelan, I'm sorry. I did not see that those were time certain items. We're not there yet. So we cannot proceed with those items just yet. We'll go to the regular agenda, please. If we can go to item 331.
331, proclaim April 24th, 2022 to be Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day.
Colleagues, this proclamation remembers the Armenian genocide, when in April of 1915, more than 1.5 million Armenians were deported, massacred, or marched to their deaths in a campaign of extermination. I'm sorry, one moment. Can we shut that one off? All right, testing. All right, let me start over. Colleagues, this proclamation remembers the Armenian genocide when in April of 1915, more than 1.5 million Armenians were deported, massacred, or marched to their deaths in a campaign of deliberate extermination. We take this time to mourn the tragic loss of so many lives. As we take a moment to reflect on the impact of this horrific tragedy, we also renew our commitment at the City of Portland to learn from history and to continue to ensure that hate and discrimination and their destructive consequences have no place in our communities. It's also imperative to recognize the strength and the resiliency of the Armenian community in continuing to keep their traditions alive and rebuilding their community, often in new lands. We welcome them and we celebrate their contributions to the City of Portland. And now I'd like to introduce Mariah Klemenko, the city's Immigrant and Refugee Program Coordinator, who will introduce our guests. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, City Council. Thank you so much for having us here and for taking the time to do this proclamation. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to invite you to join me in taking a moment of silence to remember the victims of this genocide. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now it is my sincere pleasure to introduce the two speakers that we have today who are members of the Armenian community. We have Alice Sambatian, who is a senior IT developer with Multnomah County. She is also a fourth-generation genocide survivor and chair of the Multnomah County Employee Resource Group for Immigrants and Refugees. And our second speaker is Esther Nor Ashkarian, who is the co-chair of the Armenia Youth Organization of Oregon and a student at PSU. And with that, I would like to pass it over to Alice, please.
She appears to still be muted.
Okay, sorry. There you go. I'm going to try that again. Thank you. And good morning, Mayor and distinct members of the City Council. I want to recognize and thank Maria Klemenko for her support and for helping move this proclamation forward. I am delighted to be here on this important occasion. This is a very important topic and needs adequate time and attention. As an Armenian, I value this opportunity to tell my family story in a public setting for the first time. For those who don't know, on April 24th, 1915, leaders of the Armenian community in Constantinople were arrested and killed, marking the start of the Armenian genocide, where 1.5 million Armenians were ruthlessly massacred on our ancestral lands. Although April 24th was significant, what happened was a result of culmination of attacks and massacres, which started in the late 1800s and went unnoticed. These massacres continued through those after the genocide through the sushi pogroms in 1920, which with the killing of the Armenian population of Sushi and the destruction of the Armenian half of the city, the Sumgait and Baku pogroms in February of 1988, when the people of Artsakh, Armenian people of Artsakh, wanted to legally become an autonomous state outside of Azeri borders, and as recently as the 2020 war perpetrated by Azerbaijan. Each of these ruthless massacres were on our ancestral lands, and they were in response to demands for more humane treatment and resulted in mass human and cultural losses. I grew up hearing the stories of my family, but it wasn't until after we moved to the United States that I could comprehend the magnitude of these events. My great-grandfather had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. His middle brother and he were studying in the United States in 1915. As the massacres began, he left his brother here with instructions to continue their lineage and return to their homeland to fight. Our family saw many losses, including women being forced into marriage with Turks, sisters committing suicide in order to free themselves from Turkish harem, daughters and grandmothers drowning during the migration, and men of the family being gathered up and outright executed. When my family was moving to US, my great aunt handed us a wedding invitation of her cousin. This was the daughter of the brother that was left in US, and asked us if we'd be able to find them and get in touch with them. I will never forget when the eldest child, being the eldest child and most fluent in English, I was asked by my mother to call this lady named Madeline. I didn't know what to say or how she'd react. Hearing her voice and reaction at that time and visiting her a few years back for her 90th birthday party, I realized how much she had missed the connection with her homeland and her family. The big loss of time and relationship, the assimilation, the loss of language and cultural knowledge. Almost every Armenian family has been affected by the genocide, has lost family members, valuables, ancestral lands, and homes. It has resulted in a great Armenian diaspora, including that which lives in Portland today. And as such, recognizing the Armenian genocide is important not only for the Armenian community, it is an important step in preventing genocides of other ethnic groups. The Gypsy, Jewish, Tutsi, Cambodian, Palestinian, Lebanese, Syrian, Sudanese, and many other genocides could have been prevented with a timely recognition and reparation of the Armenian genocide. It is my deep belief that these acts will stop only when there's a recognition and intentional action to stop the repetition of these events. Only retribution equal to the severity of the pain caused can help prevent genocide in the future. I thank you for your support and consideration, and I yield over to Esther. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Esther Narashkarian. I'm a first-generation Armenian American and current student at Portland State University. I'm honored to be here and to be able to speak. I will be offering more historical insight regarding the event. Thank you. I want you all to visualize. It's serene. You're lying asleep and a cool breeze of the Caucasus Mountains lightly grazes your face. As you wake up and look out through your window, you see the sun rising gently, painting the beautiful mountains and meadows of Ararat Mountain. Suddenly, this tranquility is interrupted by the sound of gunshots and yelling. Your door is ripped open, and in a matter of seconds, you are stripped of everything and tossed outside. For the next 8 years, you are forced to walk miles through the hot desert. You are beaten, starved, and worked to exhaustion. The people around you perish, and at this point, you would rather die than live another day. To many of you, this is just a horrible and uncomfortable hypothetical, but for my great-grandparents and the many Armenians impacted by the horrific events that took place in 1915, this was their reality. Up until 1944, the word genocide didn't exist. It came to be during the Holocaust when Polish-Jewish lawyer Raphael Lemkin searched for a word to describe the crime without a name, as Churchill described, the systematic massacring of an ethnic population. Lemkin was horrified upon learning about the tragic events the Ottoman Empire committed against the Armenians during World War I and how the perpetrators of those crimes went unpunished. Outraged that there was no legal precedent for punishing perpetrators of such terrible crimes. A decade prior to the official start of the Armenian genocide, the Armenian people were victims of the Hamidian massacres, which resulted in 300,000 lives being taken needlessly. In 1914, the Turkish Ottoman Empire began to boycott and burn Armenian businesses, attack small villages, and prevent communications through the postal services for Armenians. Eerily similar to the events that took place over a decade later during Kristallnacht before the Holocaust. April 24th, 1915, the genocide began. By the order of Talat Pasha, over 270 Armenian leaders and scholars were arrested, detained, shot, burned, hung, and drowned. Ottoman troops began attacking village by village and forcing the Armenian people to march to their deaths. Armenian schools were destroyed, churches burned, and hospitals demolished. At this point, All of what the Armenian people had established were subjected to destruction, and this was a calculated move in order to remove any trace of the Armenian people. While this was occurring, the Ottoman government had censored any and all news going out to foreign outlets so that the entire world was clueless to the annihilation of the Armenian people. As the Armenian people were forced to march through the hot desert, leaving everything behind, many died of starvation, exhaustion, or were shot. 1.5 million Armenians were brutally murdered, and hundreds of thousands were displaced, orphaned, and forced to flee as refugees. Although the Armenian genocide and Holocaust carry a multitude of eerie similarities, justice and denial set the two apart. Germany admitted, recognized, and attempted reparations for its genocide of the Jewish people, as did most of the world. Yet Turkey continues to deny the genocide of Armenians, remains unpunished and held unaccountable, and persecutes those who discuss the events of 1915. Only a decade after the 1915 genocide was the Holocaust. Hitler was inspired by the success of Turkey in massacring the Armenians without consequence, stating, "Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians?" The Armenian genocide is one of the first modern genocides to go unrecognized, but it was certainly not the last. Only 4 decades later was the Cambodian genocide, then the Rwandan genocide in 1990, the Bosnian genocide of 1995, and the Darfurian genocide in 2003. All of these were the result of denial. I hope that by awareness and education, there will be a stride towards change and reconciliation. By recognizing the Armenian genocide, whether on a local, national, or global scale, we are acknowledging that the lives needlessly lost are remembered, and that the perpetrators must be held accountable for their crimes against humanity. Until these atrocities are recognized for what they were, history will only repeat itself. Achieving recognition of the Armenian genocide has been a centuries-long struggle. The milestones reached, such as Congress affirming the facts of the genocide in 2019 and Biden's historic recognition in 2020, have been a result of us, the resilient Armenian diaspora. But the threat of annihilation still lingers over the Armenian people, as thousands of Armenians in Artsakh were killed in unprovoked attacks by Azerbaijan and Turkey in 2020. Many cities, such as Los Angeles, have already dedicated April 24th as Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day, as the community stands in solidarity with the Armenian people. We ask that the city of Portland does the same for its Armenian community in this fight for justice. Thank you.
Alice, Esther, thank you both so much for your time and your testimony. And with that, I will pass it back to the mayor.
Thank you very much. I will leave some space here for my colleagues to talk before I read the proclamation. Commissioner Maps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, colleagues. I'm honored to join you in proclaiming April 24th to be Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. As we learned from our speakers, this day commemorates April 24th, 1915. On that day, Armenian intellectuals and community leaders in Constantinople were arrested by Ottoman authorities. Grimmer events followed over the course of the next 2 years. Around 1 million Armenian women and children, the elderly and infirmed, were sent on death marches into the Syrian desert. And on Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day, we remember the lives of those who died. And we celebrate and support the survivors and their descendants, and we recommit ourselves to preventing an atrocity like this from ever occurring again. And on Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day, we should also remember the victims of genocide everywhere. The Jewish people, Cambodians, Bosnians, Rwandans, Palestinians, the Lebanese people, Syrians, Kurds, the Sudanese, they have all endured their own genocides. And after each of these tragedies, the people of the world have declared never again. And after each of those genocides, the unthinkable has happened again. In fact, genocide might even be happening today. So on this day, as we remember those lost to genocide. Let's work towards a future where genocide is a thing of the past. Let's build a city that rejects bigotry and intolerance. Let's create a culture that respects human rights. Let's make a world where people can live with dignity and security. And let's embrace healing and reconciliation. Colleagues, for these reasons and more, I join you in proclaiming April 24th to be Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day in Portland. And I encourage all Portlanders to observe this day by remembering the Armenians who perished in a genocide that began 107 years ago on April 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor, thank you for bringing this to the dais today. Mariah, I want to start by just appreciating the way you began this presentation, this moment to remember with having us pause and be present and have a moment of silence. It really was helpful. Elise, I don't know how to say your name, the second person who presented. I'm so sorry that I might not have pronounced that correctly.
That's Alice, it's fine.
Pardon me?
Alice.
Alice, okay. Anyway, thank you for the stories. They were painful and true, and that's what we need to always hear. Is we need those stories to be told, and yours was very profound. And that's the healing begins as we tell the truth, and it restores us to some sanity. Anyway, I really appreciated hearing that. Your stories right-sized my heart this morning for sure. I feel very different after being in the presence of all three of you. And Estrid, your grandparents are so proud of you. I think you said a line that was something like, you would rather die than live another day. That's really deep. So again, just thank you for being here. I'm so proud that you're a student at Portland State. They're a fortunate university to have you on their campus, and we'll be watching for you. Anyway, a century long of denial is despicable, and there's a lot of stories like this. So thank you for lifting them up and for coming to council today and giving me a moment to just be really present, to remember and never, ever, ever forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor and Mariah, for bringing this proclamation forward. As I was preparing for this council meeting and this memorialization, I learned that April is actually Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month. And I want to lift that up in the conversation because I think it's also very significant. Even though the Armenian genocide happened well over 100 years ago, it's still very present and alive today. And it's astounding and shocking that we still have genocides that are happening with regularity in years since. It's heartbreakingly clear that we haven't learned from the horrific lessons in history. And the Armenian community is vast, diverse, and resilient all over the world. And today, we stand with you to honor these stories and acknowledge the deep injustices and violence committed against your community. And Elise and Esther, I want to personally thank you for sharing your family stories. It really brings it home in a way that each one of us can relate to our family stories about our grandparents and particularly as immigrants. And for reminding us all about the strength of your community and how your history is more relevant now than ever. I also hear your call for recognition and support you in your call for international recognition and reparations. Yeah, and in some parts of the world, the refusal to acknowledge this deep injustice and the genocide committed against the Armenian community. So it's on us to ensure that we take this day to recognize and reflect on the important time in your history and emphatically do all we can to learn from it. But more also than that, it's also important to lift up the beauty and stories and families and culture and the tremendous contributions of the Armenian community to the world and also to our city. So thank you for this opportunity to face our history and to never again let it happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Commissioner Hardesty.
I certainly cannot add anything more eloquent than my colleagues have already said, but I just wanted to appreciate Merlin for bringing this resolution forward and centering us to ensure that that Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day is something that we all will internalize. And as you all said so eloquently, genocide is unfortunately a part of world history and U.S. history, and I don't think there's any country that is that could claim that they have not been a part of such. I am so proud, Suzanne, of you being a student at Portland State University, and your eloquent words really, really touched my heart and my spirit. And I want you to know I see you, and your ancestors are proud of the path that you are on. I want to also thank you, Alex, for your beautiful words and your real giving us an opportunity to really appreciate deeply the Armenian culture. And let me say, I hope that we don't do this one day a year, because we do proclamations a lot at this council. But I stand with Commissioner Rubio, who says, I want to lift up your struggle, because your struggle is my struggle, and all people around the world who have been struggling for equality, justice, and fairness. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. I want to thank Esther and Alice for joining us today and sharing their important personal stories with us. And I also want to thank Mariah for her work in drafting and coordinating this proclamation. Mariah, we're very honored to have you as a member of our city workforce team. Thank you for your leadership in that regard as well. And now the proclamation. Whereas April is the month of Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month, as it marks important anniversaries for multiple acts of genocide in the 20th century. And whereas April 24th, 1915, marks the initial stages of Armenian genocide at the beginning of World War I. Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month honors millions of losses from the Armenian, Jewish, Cambodian, Bosnian, Rwandan, Palestinian, Lebanese, Syrian, Kurdish, Sudanese, and many other populations. And whereas on April 23rd, 1990, Oregon Governor Neil Goldschmidt proclaimed April 24th as the Day of Armenian Remembrance. And whereas this has been of critical significance to the Armenian American population that's been working to find itself and reestablish after the terrors they lived in the hands of the Ottoman Turks, as well as their descendants. And whereas Portland is home to the St. Kevork Armenian Apostolic Church of Oregon, serving over 250 families here locally. And whereas there are approximately 300 Armenian families in Portland, both as direct immigrants and second, third, and fourth generation members of the Armenian diaspora. And whereas with strength and with resilience, the Armenian people survived and they rebuilt their community. Over the decades, Armenian immigrants have enriched the United States in so many countless ways. But they've never forgotten the tragic history that brought so many of their ancestors to our shores. We honor their story. We see the pain. We affirm the history. We do this not to cast blame, but to ensure that what happened is never repeated. And whereas today, as we mourn what is lost, let us also turn our eyes to the future, toward the city that we wish to build for our children, a place unstained by the daily evils of bigotry and intolerance, where human rights are respected, and where all people are able to pursue their lives in dignity and in security. Let us renew our shared resolve to prevent future atrocities from occurring anywhere in the world. And let us pursue healing and reconciliation. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim April 24th to be the Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this day. Thank you all for being here and sharing in this important proclamation.
Thank you.
Let's go back to the time certain agenda, please. Items 322 and 323, if we could read them together, please.
Still not time yet, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
It's still too early for the time certain.
No, we're good. They're 10:15 time
Oh,
certain.
okay. All right.
Renew the Central East Side Industrial District Property Management License Fee for 10 years. And 323, authorize agreement for Central East Side Industrial District Management District Services with Central East Side together.
Colleagues, just as a reminder, we'll take up the resolution first. You'll recall that we heard the presentation on the resolution, we took testimony on the resolution, and then we continued it today without a vote so that we could vote on it at the same time that we vote on the ordinance. So is there any further discussion about the resolution, item number 322? Seeing none, Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just make comments about both of them at this time. I just want to acknowledge what I think we all experienced last week, which was a presentation that was refreshing because we had so many different stakeholders and leaders in our community coming together with one voice of support for this work. And you don't always see those stakeholders on the same side of the street, if you will, or in agreement with how they work together. So I want to acknowledge many people, but especially I know Kate Merrill's moving on, but her leadership to be the holder of the cat herder, if you will, of that body is really impressive. And I do think that the Central East Side Industrial District Management Services and the way they're working together, Central East Side is one of the better stories we have in the city of Portland right now. So I really know I'm standing on shoulders of people that have been on this body before me, and I want to thank them for the building that they've done. I know I've done one solve cleanup in that area, and you could feel a different vibe down there with the way people were connecting with one another. People who are currently homeless, people who are running small businesses. There was just an authenticity on how they're connecting as community. And so I'm excited about voting yes, but also about the future of the Southeast, the Central and East Side industrial area and how that will evolve. And I think all of us are excited about the future of that area of our city. And so I just wanted to take a pause to say how refreshing it was to witness that presentation, and I'm enthusiastically voting aye.
Hardesty.
I also want to take a moment to once again really appreciate Kate Merrill for her leadership and the fabulous team that she built to create a new type of enhanced service district. And the Central East Side continues to be, for me, the model of what's possible when you bring everybody to the table from the beginning. And it was a proud moment, both when it passed council initially, and it is a real proud moment now to know that even with the bumps, even with a pandemic and all the other crises we've experienced as a city, that the commitment is still there to bring together all community stakeholders to make the community safer and to enhance services for everyone. I'm very happy to vote aye.
Apps.
Mr. Mayor, colleagues, let me start out today Like my colleague Dan Ryan and my colleague Commissioner Hardesty, by thanking Kate Merrill for her leadership on the Central East Side Industrial Council. I also want to take a moment to welcome Claire to her new role as the head of the CEIC. I'd also like to share this observation. Every neighborhood in Portland is special, but Portland Central East Side is special in a unique way. The Central East Side is one of our city's engines of innovation and entrepreneurship. It's home to beloved institutions and businesses like the Architectural Heritage Center, Autodesk, Beam Development, Bunk Sandwiches, City Liquidators, Doug Fir Lounge, East Portland Rotary Club, Green Cities, Green Drop Garage, Green Works, Guardian Games, the Jupiter Hotel, Miller Paint, Noble Rot, Oregon Artificial Limb Company, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, the Oregon Rail Heritage Center, Produce Row, Rejuvenation, Salt and Straw, the Lippman Company, and many others. Of course, COVID has also been tough on the Central East Side. In recent years, street camping and crime overflowed onto the streets and sidewalks of the Central East Side like a Willamette River of human misery overflowing its banks. Still, the Central East Side not only managed to survive the pandemic, today the Portland Central East Side is thriving, and a large part of the Central East Side's vitality and resilience can be attributed to the work done by the Central East Side Industrial Council. The CEIC's cleaning crews have removed over 1.7 million pounds of trash and have removed more than 81,000 biohazards and needles. They've removed over 600,000 square feet of graffiti, and they've helped houseless camps dispose of trash more than 12,000 times. And the Central East Side Industrial Council's care teams have conducted over 1,000 wellness checks, helped 4,000 people connect to medical and mental health care. They've referred 169 people to shelter and helped 12 people secure permanent housing. And when dining halls were closed due to the pandemic, the Central East Side Industrial Council provided 16,000 meals to hungry Portlanders. Colleagues, the Central East Side Industrial Council has proven itself to be a model for how Portland neighborhoods can come together to promote human well-being and economic prosperity. For these reasons and more, I'm glad to vote aye.
Rubio.
I again want to thank Kate Merrill, the Central East Side Together team, and also CEIC members, stakeholders, businesses for the planning and the work that got us to this renewal and work today. Recovering from the pandemic and supporting our most vulnerable have been some of the biggest challenges that we're continuing to face. And the East Side Together Coalition is doing it all with a sense of mutual respect, with collaboration and community safety. And to me, this is in many ways the standard bearer for how we do the work. It's very trauma-informed and centers the community. So I'm very impressed by this collaboration. So thank you to everyone who's been a part of making it a success. And I'm very happy to vote aye.
Wheeler.
I also want to extend both my thanks as well as my congratulations to Kate. It's well-deserved. This resolution will continue the funding of what I see as a very successful, although relatively new partnership between business, between residents, between advocates, individuals who provide important service programs, and members of our most vulnerable communities. And what I especially like about this model is that a local community that has been and continues to be under significant stress and duress. And I want to be clear, we're not here declaring victory today because we don't deserve to declare victory today. I spend a lot of time meeting with stakeholders in the Central East Side Industrial District, and they are still deeply concerned about the future of their neighborhood and the viability of their businesses. So let's not forget where we are in this process. But what I love about this is the stakeholders came together and they handed us basically on a silver platter a strategy that they believed would work best for their neighborhood to help them get through the trauma, recover, and succeed and thrive in the future. And so far, everything I have seen leads me to believe that they have the right formula. And so I am enthusiastically supportive of their efforts. I believe we as a council have a responsibility to continue to partner and work with all of these stakeholders to continue the great work that they're trying to accomplish, because I believe the work they are accomplishing and the way that they are doing it is a roadmap for the rest of the city. And it is for that reason that I vote aye and the resolution is adopted. The second part of this, colleagues, is item 323. Keelan has already read it. It is a non-emergency ordinance, a second reading. So we've already heard the presentation and taken testimonies. There are further business on the ordinance. Seeing none, Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Epps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Thanks everybody for your hard work on this. Next item, 324, please.
Proclaim May 1st through the 7th, 2022 to be National Small Business Week.
Colleagues, this is also a proclamation. This item officially proclaims the first week of May as National Small Business Week, celebrating the resilience and the tenacity of America's, and in particular, Portland's entrepreneurs who are driving our economic recovery and growth. As we all know, Portland has always been and continues to be a small business city with over 32,000 small businesses, and a small business is defined as one with less than 50 employees. These firms create opportunities for over 176,000 people in the Portland area, and they're critical leaders in helping to build shared prosperity for all families and workers who reside in our city. We're very fortunate to have two of these leading entrepreneurs with us this morning to share their stories with council and with the public at large. First, I want to introduce and turn it over to Alicia Chapman, who is the owner and chief executive officer of Willamette Technical Fabricators. Alicia, thank you very much for your leadership and for being here with us this morning.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about my experience as a small business owner and the CEO of Willamette Technical Fabricators. I started my business towards the end of 2020 in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, a horrific wildfire season, and the peak of the Me Too and Black Lives Matter social justice movements. Like so many others at the time, I felt the urgent need to reevaluate my priorities and how I could be a positive force for change in my community, which was in crisis. My business, Willamette Technical Fabricators, does custom complex steel fabrication and machining, focused on supporting transportation projects that will help improve access and reduce congestion to make it easier for everyone to live, work, and play in Portland. We also build clean energy infrastructure to help Portland lead the way for America to become independent from foreign oil and fossil fuels. My company is a COVID certified disadvantaged business, and as a board member of BBPDX, Business for a Better Portland, I'm very proud to be part of a community of businesses that is committed to supporting one another's shared prosperity, and particularly other women and minority-owned small businesses. I'm also working closely with Prosper Portland to build a more equitable economy for our city through programs like Portland Means Progress, a new initiative that will help us take the next steps in building a diverse workforce and a supplier network that will make our business stronger in doing so. Like many other manufacturers, Willamette Technical Fabricators is facing a shortage of skilled labor and the realization that many of our most skilled tradespeople are close to retirement. So we're developing on-the-job training and apprenticeship programs to specifically try to recruit and train women and people of color and bring high-tech, high-pay manufacturing career opportunities to the communities that need them the most. I want to thank everyone working in Portland City Council for your support for my small business and the many others that really are the backbone of the city, many of whom are unfortunately still struggling to recover from the pandemic and dealing with supply chain disruptions and skyrocketing inflation. We're all painfully aware of the housing and homelessness crisis that has plagued our city and the need for a region-wide response to homelessness that targets the roots of the problem and provides proven solutions like affordable homes combined with wraparound services. Among those critical services, I think we need to connect people that may have lost their jobs during the pandemic with new opportunities, supporting businesses like mine that are eager to staff up. And they need access to relevant job skills training and education services. I believe that small businesses like Willamette Technical Fabricators will be a key part of those solutions, providing family wage jobs, great benefits, and flexibility to people to start over. And I hope the city continues to see small businesses as a critical ally in this fight. I'm optimistic about the future of the city as long as we continue to recognize that the success of the Portland small business community is critical to the success of the city as a whole and to all of us. Thank you again.
Thank you, Alicia. We appreciate your being here this morning. We also have with us today David Fees, the General Manager of Castelli Sportful USA. Welcome. We're happy to have you here, David.
Hi there. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and City Council. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our business and then talk to you briefly about some of the trends we're seeing in the small business community, some of the programs we've taken advantage of, and where we see that we can continue to receive help from you. So we are Castelli Sportful USA. We are the US subsidiary of an Italian brand. So we're an example of foreign direct investment. We're the global leader in premium cycling apparel. We make clothes for high-end cycling. Our products have been worn in the Tour de France and in the Olympics, but also by recreational riders all over Portland. We moved to Portland about 15 years ago from Minnesota, and we did it because of the access to great, talented people, particularly in the sports and outdoors industry, as well as access to great cycling and great outdoors. And 15 years later, that's still true. That's why we're still here. Our offices are located in Northeast Portland in the Hollywood district. We operate all of our sales and marketing here. We do some product design, and then we have a warehouse where we ship product to consumers and dealers all over the country. COVID-19 has been challenging for us, like everyone, but it's also been fantastic for the cycling industry. And we've grown from 21 to 28 employees over the last 2 years. In terms of trends we're seeing in the small business community, and specifically in the athletic and outdoors industry, just as we are facing competition from other brands, we're seeing that Portland is seeing a lot of competition. I've spent many days at trade shows in the cycling and outdoors industry where we have representatives from Colorado and Utah and Washington and New York going booth to booth to booth, trying to convince us to move our headquarters out. And so that's the type of competition that Portland is seeing. And the good news is I know Portland is out there doing the same, but we do need to be aware that the rest of the industry is aware that this is a successful place to start a business and operate a business, and they're coming for us. We do continue to have access to great and talented people. We see them moving here. So there's a lot of competition for talent here, but that is still today, one of the great things about the city is the access to talent. We have taken advantage of just about every program we can find through the City of Portland and Prosper Portland. We participate in network that the city promotes. We participate in the Urban Renewal Grant Program. And we also recently this year have participated in the Inspiring Diversity Grant Program. It's just been a wonderful program for us. We actually have 4 students from De La Salle North Catholic High School to come and work in our office 4 days a week. And it wouldn't have been possible without the Inspiring Diversity Grant. So thank you for that. And I wanted to recognize Sue Ball from Prosper Portland. She's been a wonderful resource in helping me find all these resources for over a decade. And finally, where we can continue to use your help, we ask you continue to support the educational programs from high school to community college to college, including the Portland State Retail Program, the Benson Tech Program, the Fashion Institute, the University of Oregon Sports Product Program. We really do hire people out of these products, particularly the entry-level positions, and it really does make a difference. And we hope that you'll continue to support them. We will ask you to continue to invest in cycling in the outdoors. Not only makes it a great place to live, it really does make it easier to attract candidates here and move businesses here. It makes it a better place to work. And then finally, like others, we've felt the impact of homelessness and crime here in our offices in Northeast Portland, and we ask that you continue to put focus on that and make it a safe place to work and ride your bike and recreate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I'll turn this over to my colleagues for a few comments before I read the proclamation on behalf of the City Council. Commissioner Mapps.
Mr. Mayor, colleagues, first let me start out by thanking Alicia and David for being here today and telling us a little bit about their stories and their businesses. We're awfully glad that you are doing business here in Portland. And colleagues, I am delighted to join you in proclaiming May 1st through May 7th, 2022 to be National Small Business Week. National Small Business Week is an opportunity to recognize and celebrate small businesses. As we've heard, there are over 32 million small businesses in these United States. Those small businesses provide 2/3 of the jobs in this country. And here in Portland, there are more than 32,000 small businesses, and those small businesses employ over 176,000 people. This year's Small Business Week is particularly important because the past couple of years have been so hard on Portland's small businesses. We all mourn the neighborhood institutions that did not survive this pandemic. For example, I miss the Cup and Saucer restaurant on Hawthorne, which closed after 34 years in business. Bailey's Tap Room is gone too. So are Stacked Sandwich Shop, circa 33, Toffee Club, Bijou Cafe, Bistro Montage, Cheese Bar, and every Pock restaurant. Despite these losses, I think it's important to also celebrate our successes. That's why I want to take a moment to recognize the important work that Congressman Earl Blumenauer has done to support the restaurant industry here in Portland. And I'm also proud of the steps this council has taken to help Portland small businesses during this pandemic. For example, during the pandemic, this council directed tens of millions of dollars in aid towards small businesses. Through Prosper Portland Small Business Relief Fund, we provided direct relief to businesses struggling to keep their doors open during the pandemic. And our local Small Business Repair Grant Fund provided grants to local small businesses trying to figure out how to pay for that broken window or the graffiti or vandalism. While this council has taken important steps to support small businesses, there is more work to be done. Like every member of this council, every day, my office hears from Portland small businesses who tell me that City Hall needs to do more to make Portland a great place to start and grow a small business. Here are the challenges Portland small businesses have asked this council to take on. This council needs to embrace policies that promote small business. We should promote economic development in neighborhoods that have been left behind, and we should embrace technology and innovation. I believe this council can make progress towards those goals in the next couple of weeks by passing a budget which supports small businesses. That's why I hope the budget this council passes on May 11th will include support for small business stabilization, commercial activations, and re-tenanting. And we should listen to the organizations that represent the interest of small businesses, including the Chambers of Commerce that support BIPOC businesses, Venture Portland, the Portland Business Alliance, Better Business PDX, and Bricks Need Mortar. Colleagues, I'm committed to taking those actions. And for these reasons and more, I'm glad to join you in proclaiming May 1st through May 7th, 2022 to be National Small Business Week in Portland. And I encourage all residents to observe this week by shopping at a small business here in Portland. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio.
First, I'd like to thank Mayor Wheeler for bringing this very important proclamation forward. To say that we appreciate the economic and social contributions of Portland's small business community is a vast understatement. We owe small businesses a huge debt of gratitude for creating what is Portland's true economic bedrock and backbone. Portland's known for its innovative and vast small business community, and that's why so many entrepreneurs choose Portland. But the pandemic hit this sector really hard. And while some managed to hold on, as we've heard, we also lost many. And despite this, many small businesses continue to be resilient and tenacious and innovative in order to move through this very challenging time. And as a city, we've taken some important steps to mitigate some of these challenges through investments to the small businesses, but of course, it's not nearly enough to meet the need. But what it also is a call to action for us as local government to continue to support and, when possible, step up these investments into this really important sector and demonstrate our support through action. So to Alicia and David and all the small business leaders who've become activists for their sectors and on behalf of their employees' needs, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for staying local. Thank you for investing in our community, in this community. And we also appreciate your commitment to our city during the good times and the hard times. So thank you. We appreciate you. I vote. We don't vote. I was going to say I vote aye, but I support you.
Thanks, Commissioner Rubio. Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing this forward. I'm excited about this topic. There's a lot of reasons why we have a fire in our belly to do a job like this, to serve our city. And at the top, one of them at the very top of my list is definitely advocating for the innovative entrepreneurs who built the Rose City and just continue to build our city. And that, of course, will always be our small businesses and those brave and daring creative entrepreneurs. And I just want to lift a few who I have close relationships with. And I apologize to many others who are on the tip of my tongue who I also have close relationships with, but we have time limits. I want to start with Ian Williams, who owns Deadstock Coffee Roasters. I've learned so much from listening to your story over the last few months, last 6 months. And I'm just so proud of the way you're so resilient and continuing to expand your business. Michael Lagarde, who owns 5 Star Cleaners. There's 2 locations, but one in particular, the one that I go to on Northeast Broadway, he's just been pummeled with one broken window after another, if you will, one robbery after another, and been so patient and so resilient. And we hear you, we see you, and thanks for hanging in there. And many people who live in that area are grateful that you're surviving as a small business. Keno Bracken, Nick Davidson, the owners of Lloyd Athletic Club, the best athletic club in the city, have really been so resilient to stay at whole during this crisis. And we all know that our mental health is really benefited when we have a chance to be in community, to exercise and to connect. And so I know I speak for many, especially Northeast Portland, that attend that gym. I want to end with the small business housing providers. They're just a foundational root of our city. I think back to so many of us that first came to Portland, that was the affordable housing. The most rich and deep affordable housing we have in our city is from our small business housing providers. And they're probably the most overlooked and underappreciated in our housing stock. And I see you, I hear you, and we must continue to lift all of you. Sometimes you're called ma pa landlords. You have been probably hit hardest during the pandemic in ways that are difficult for people to sometimes see. You have been surviving, and sadly, too many of you are also been selling the stock of your small business homes. And because I think the combination of our city has made it difficult for you to pencil things out. So we need to make that wrong right, because again, you provide probably the best organic housing stock for affordable housing in our city. So I'm so excited that we had a moment to just acknowledge our small businesses. I'm glad that we get to vote yes on some initiatives coming from Prosper Portland, whether it's repair grants or stabilization grants. Those are definitely needed and wanted. And so I join my colleagues in acknowledging this is Small Business Week. Thanks so much. I vote aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing this proclamation forward. And thank you, colleagues, for saying just about everything that could be said about this topic. Let me say that small businesses are, in fact, the backbone of our city, no doubt about it. And the fastest growing small businesses in the city of Portland are women-owned and people of color-owned. And of course, COVID had an impact on every single small business in our community. And some are better able and more resilient to be able to continue on and see a path towards the future. It is my hope that part of the federal dollars that we send out will actually be supporting small businesses in our community and making sure that those small businesses can continue to be innovative and creative in providing opportunity for so many folks who have been displaced economically in our city by COVID and all that came after that. I also am a strong supporter of small businesses. Got to tell you, it's devastating for me that every restaurant that I would do lunch or happy hour at all closed downtown as part of the last 2 years evolution. But here's what I know to be true. There are a lot of creative, talented people in the city. And what we know about the restaurant business is it comes and goes. And I'm confident that we will have new opportunities as we all try to emerge from this economic devastation. It is absolutely the right thing to do is to highlight small businesses, which again, I would say the ones that have 20 or less employees are much more prolific and have least access to capital and additional resources to expand. And so as a city that wants all our small businesses to be able to thrive as we come back, I hope the city will be creative about how we create maker spaces so that our smaller entrepreneurs aren't priced out of being able to give their talents into the city of Portland. So I'm very happy to support this resolution today. And I thank you again, Mayor Wheeler, for just highlighting how important small businesses are to all of our economic recovery in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Thank you, colleagues. Before I read the proclamation, I also want to thank many members of my team and as well as the good folks at Prosper Portland for their work on drafting this important proclamation. And with that, I will read a proclamation on behalf of the city of Portland. Actually, before I do that, I just want to make one additional comment because you've all made really thoughtful statements about the importance of supporting small business, whether it's through our support through retention dollars or activation dollars or other work. What I hear most often from small business owners and operators, and I speak with a good many of them, and they're never shy about expressing their needs from this council. And what they tell me, if I had to take all the different comments, the thousands of them, and sort of consolidate it into one statement, I would say this. What they're asking us to do is create an environment in which they can do what they do and thrive. And what I also hear is they're not necessarily looking for dollars after the fact to help prop them up. What they're looking for is a city that is functional. They're looking for us to address what we have stated as our top priorities, whether it's improvements in public safety, whether it's addressing the humanitarian crisis on our streets, whether it's keeping the city clean and picked up and graffiti free, and creating an environment in our neighborhood business districts and in our downtown core where their customers and their clients feel safe and welcome. And that's what I hear more than anything else from small business owners and operators. And I just wanted to share that with all of us since you guys shared some really good points, I thought. So here's the proclamation on behalf of the entire Portland City Council. Whereas despite a worldwide pandemic, our resilient small businesses continue to pioneer innovative solutions to our country's greatest challenges and create opportunities for both families as well as workers. And whereas there are over 32,000 small businesses of less than 50 employees in the city of Portland, including brick and mortar retail shops serving neighborhood needs, small manufacturers driving our competitiveness on the global stage, and world-renowned restaurants, all of which comprise the backbone of our local economy. And whereas these local small businesses employ over 176,000 people in the Portland area, generating $10 billion in payroll. Whereas we must continue to do more to support local small business, especially in historically underserved and underrepresented parts of our community, in order to create equitable opportunities for all Portlanders and to empower communities to preserve their unique cultures. And whereas, because this country's 32.5 million small businesses create nearly 2 out of 3 jobs in our economy, it's critical that we continue to prioritize inclusive economic growth, provide technical support, and focus on job creation measures that directly support our entrepreneurs. And whereas the President of the United States has proclaimed National Small Business Week every year since 1963 to highlight the programs and services available to entrepreneurs through the U.S. Small Business Administration and other government agencies. And whereas the City of Portland supports and joins in this national effort to help America's small businesses do what they do best, grow their businesses, create jobs, and ensure that our local communities remain as vibrant tomorrow as they are today. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, and a city of small businesses, do hereby proclaim May 1st through May 7th, 2022, as National Small Business Week in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this week. Thank you, everyone. We can now move back to the regular agenda. Item number 332, please, Keelan.
Approve application under the multiple unit limited tax exemption program under the inclusionary housing program for Southeast 27th and Division Apartments located at 2680 Southeast Division Street.
Thank you. This is a second reading. We've already heard a presentation and taken public testimony on this item. Is there any further business? Seeing none, Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Excuse me. Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Item 333, please, which is a non-emergency ordinance.
Assess benefited properties for street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements north of Southwest Luradell Street in the Southwest 47th Avenue Phase 1 Local Improvement District.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to turn this over to who is going. Give me just a sec. I am going to turn this over to Andrew, I believe is here, Andrew Albies, to present this measure. Here he is. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. Sorry about that, Commissioner Hardesty. I have a little bit of an unstable internet connection today, but looks like things are working pretty well. So members of the City Council, this item before you today is to close out the Southwest 47th Avenue Phase 1 Local Improvement District. I do not have a council presentation today. We did not receive any remonstrances against LID formation. This project improved 307 feet of unpaved street in the West Portland Park neighborhood. Although it was a very small project, it was an important project because Southwest Portland has the highest proportion of unpaved streets in the city. And in particular, West Portland Park has 10.4% of the streets in the neighborhood unpaved relative to a citywide average of 2.8%. This is the 5th largest proportion of unpaved streets among neighborhoods in the city, behind Far Southwest, Markham, Linton, and the Brentwood Darlington neighborhoods. So very pleased to complete this challenging project. Again, there were no remonstrances received against LID formation, so I'm simply requesting that council pass this to a second reading and approve it next week. And before I let you go, Commissioner Hardesty, I was going to stick around and was hoping we could make a quick amendment to the ordinance on the next agenda item. So that concludes my report to council, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Thank you, Andrew. Colleagues, any questions at this time? Keelan, do we have any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. Thank you, Andrew. Thorough and to the point as always. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, please, Keelan. Item 334.
Create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the Southeast 155th Avenue and Main Street, Mill Main Drive Local Improvement District.
Colleagues, this is a second reading. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want you to know that there was a filing error with Exhibit F and Exhibit G basically being the exact same exhibit. And so I am asking that we have provided a new Exhibit G, which would add an emergency clause. And so I need to make a motion to add the new Exhibit G, which would then make this an emergency clause for us to be able to vote on it today.
Commissioner Hardesty moves an amendment to correct the exhibits and moves to also have this voted on as an emergency ordinance. I'll second the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Mayor Wheeler, I believe we need to amend the ordinance to add the emergency clause as well, and I can read that to you if you would like me to.
Yeah, Andrew, I believe Commissioner Hardesty did, but why don't you read the formal language of the amendment just so we have it on the record, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to make sure that the motion that council is considering also adds this emergency clause to the ordinance. So I'll read it to you. The council declares that an emergency exists to avoid delays to land use approval for construction of Park Lane Park because formation of this local improvement district provides assurance of performance for street frontage improvements per code section 17.24.055. Therefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage by the council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Andrew. To the amendment, any further discussion, Commissioner Hardesty? Keelan, please call the roll on the amendment.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment's adopted. Corrects both the amendment or corrects both the exhibit as well as adds the emergency clause. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, 335.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the Sullivan Pump Station Safety Improvements Project number E11356 for an estimated cost of $1,040,000.
This is the second reading. Any further business on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 336, also a second reading.
Authorize bid solicitation and contracting with the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for construction of the groundwater pump station motor control center replacement project for an estimated cost of $2,425,000.
Any further discussion, colleagues? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. And last but not least, item 337.
Amend Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund Heat Response Equipment Purchasing Partner Grant with Earth Advantage Inc. to increase the services of community distribution partners in the amount of $6,325,000.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty, do you have your hand raised or no?
I do, Mayor. I was wondering if this is really going to take an hour. I was wondering if we could have a little break before we jumped into this conversation.
Let's ask Commissioner Rubio. Commissioner Rubio?
That's fine with me.
All right, why don't we go ahead and do this? Let's take a 10-minute break. It is about 11:20. We'll reconvene at 11:30. We're in recess until 11:30.
Thank you, Mayor. In June 2021, over 100 Oregonians tragically lost their lives to extreme heat, with over 60 lives lost in Multnomah County. This heat wave was one of the deadliest documented natural disasters in Multnomah County's history. And we're here today to address our community's need for greater access to efficient cooling. Staff will be looking to us to take action on an ordinance that will allocate funding to community distribution partners in the heat response program. And as a reminder, this is the second half and final action of this project and complementary to the role that Earth Advantage plays for us as our equipment purchasing partner. So we will also use this time today to address other community concerns that you have heard recently. And I also want to thank the staff for their incredibly long hours and hard work on these two items today. So with that, I will turn it over to Donnie Oliveira, Director of Planning and Sustainability and PSEF staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Good morning, Commissioners. Donnie Oliveira, Director of Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. Today with me is Portland Clean Energy Program staff, Sam Barrasso, Program Manager, and James Valdez, who's the Organizational Development Policy Manager. So as Commissioner Rubio just acknowledged, the extreme heat events of 2021 are consistent with the most worst case climate scenarios that we could expect in the Pacific Northwest. And so in response, PSEF, with the support of the PSEF committee and you all, created the Heat Response Program, which is a 5-year effort to distribute 15,000 portable heat pump cooling units to PSEF priority populations, prioritizing those with the greatest heat-related risk. So today's item is to address the next important steps in that program, as the Commissioner acknowledged, to allocate the funding to select the initial cohort to distribute those important units. As you know, we've been working extensively at this program's development to create a really robust system and to administer the community's will through the ballot initiative. Staff are going to provide an overview of these improvements, but I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that there's been a lot of conversation about the future of PSEF and the structure. I want to just say that over 2 years, this team has built up an incredible governance structure with a lot of really thoughtful planning going into that, and continues. And everything we heard from the auditor's report, all those recommendations we support and agree with, and many of those recommendations were already in the works through our plan, because this program is just 2 years old, first of its kind governance model that's brand new with community-led provisions, as well as addressing the critical nature of the climate movement. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam Barrasso, who's going to walk through some of those critical changes that we're looking at going forward for PSEF. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Director Oliveira, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Sam Barrasso, and I'm the Program Manager for the Portland Clean Energy Fund. I'm going to go ahead and share our slide deck and make sure you all see those. Give me 1 second here. You should all see that. Good, thank you. Getting used to this. As Donnie shared, I will walk you all through our additional grant review process, which we've applied to our grant applications from our second major request for proposals that are currently under review. I'll then walk you all through our structural improvement work plan, which is intended to address our fund balance, the program's greater than expected revenues, the significant program learnings to date, and remaining audit recommendations from our audit that are not captured in these other items. And then I'm going to then hand things over to James Valdez, our Policy and Organization Development Manager, who's also serving as our project manager for the Heat Response Program, to walk you through the main agenda item before you for a decision, an ordinance to allocate funding for our community distribution partners in a heat response program. So with that, just want to make sure you see the flow of the presentation. I'll jump in and share about our additional review process. So on January 19th, 2022, earlier this year, the Portland Clean Energy Fund Committee approved additional steps in the review process for grant applications currently under review. This approach supports successful project implementation, offers more structured support for new, emerging, and growing organizations. It also addresses potential risks related to project implementation and financial management, and creates specific paths for staff to adjust proposals, contributing to the program's long-term viability. And so in the next slide, these were really the objectives of that modification to our review process. And in designing that review process, we consulted with professionals from community development financial institutions who conduct due diligence on hard-to-bank communities and businesses, as well as our largest regional grant makers. While there are certainly differences in that PDFIs expect to be repaid while grant-making institutions do not, the due diligence elements are both similar and transferable, and that informed how we built this out. Our additional review process is comprised of several steps, and I'm going to share that with you in the next couple of slides. So our review process starts with a screening process where we call in applications for additional review. Applications that hit several thresholds, whether they're asking for more funding than their last 3 years of average funding, we're asking for more than 2 times funding, whether they're a new organization, have been around for less than a few years, or whether they're pivoting into a new area or a new line of work. So those are the ways in which we call in applications for additional review. Once we call in the applications for additional review, we identify the risks for that particular proposal, and then we request additional information from the applicant. We review that additional information, and ultimately we determine whether we need to modify that application or request a modification, all in order for it to move forward to our scoring panel. But as part of that, we ultimately decide, once we've asked for additional information, review that additional information and compare it to the risks we've characterized for that application, whether that application should advance as it was proposed, whether it's going to require modifications that we inform in order to move further in the scoring process, or whether it should not advance further in the scoring process. So this is all just part of it moving forward in the scoring process. And I'm going to give you a little description of what that looks like in the next slide.
Sam, sorry to interrupt you. Commissioner Hardesty has her hand raised.
Thank you, Sam. I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but I'm curious if this is a process that will be utilized for all new grants, or for a specific portion of the grants. Is this like a new, an additional process that you're putting in place for all the grant applicants?
So this is thank you, Commissioner RC Mayor Wheeler. This is a process that we have designed because our applications from RFP2 were due November 30th or so, and folks had already designed, submitted their applications. This has been designed for that set of proposals, although we will be taking these lessons learned and applying them. So it'll look a little differently when we carry them forward to future RFPs. But ultimately, this review, we didn't apply them. I think we had 160 proposals. We called in something like 50 applications for additional review. So we screened them in based on meeting certain thresholds.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate that.
Okay. And so to give you a sense for what we were asking for when we were evaluating, whether we've said this, particular proposal, our concerns here may be performance risk, or is it financial management risk? And so we would ask for additional information from the applicants around other work that the applicant organization has done, or their lead project staff has done, that has been similar in scope, complexity, and/or size. Again, both from the organization and as well as the lead project staff, including references that could verify that information. And then if it's financial management risk, that's the core concern. And we ask for information related to their board governance, their bylaws, meeting minutes, connecting and reviewing information with their treasurer. So just a range of information that we request. And ultimately, we evaluate that information and we determine whether, one, should the proposal move forward to our scoring panels as it was originally proposed. So several of them, that's it. We reviewed the information and said, yep, this is sufficient. We're gonna forward the proposal to our scoring panel so it can be evaluated and then determine whether it should still be on the recommended list of projects. So this is a step in that process. B, we could ask for additional risk mitigation measures as a condition of advancing in the grant review. That may be firm stage gates in a grant agreement that says you need to hit these key points before you can move forward. It may be reducing a percentage of the budget. It may be not allowing advance payment or prohibiting advance payment. It may be downscoping the project or modifying the budget, or ultimately shifting it to a planning grant. So there's a handful of options that we've taken in, and it may be just saying this part of the project is not should be adjusted. Then lastly, we could also recommend that the project not advance in the scoring process. And generally, we reserve this for, it's really about projects where we've got significant and documented misrepresentations in the proposal. This is really the last of options if that's what we've observed in that additional review. And so that really captures what we've done here in terms of how we've been implementing this additional review. As I noted in response to the question from Commissioner Hardesty, this will look different in future cycles. We're going to have lessons learned from this. This did add time to our review process. We expected to come to you all with a second round proposals in April. This was added time. And so when we come back to you all with the next round of proposals, we will give you more detailed and more contextual information around what exactly did we learn out of this. How many projects did we downscope? Did we adjust? How many projects went through this? But I just wanted to, as this is a moment we're coming before you, I wanted you all to get a sense for how we're employing that additional review so that when we come forth in front of you all in June, you have a sense for that and we'll give you more information.
Sam, can I comment on this, please? I very strongly support the recommendations that you've put here under Section B. And I particularly want to thank you for your thoughtful proposal around the stage gate, particularly around either performance related issues or financial related issues. I think that could stave off some of the issues that were identified early in the program and have been identified by the auditor as potential weaknesses in the accountability system. But I do have one question that wasn't fundamentally resolved. In the audit, the auditor put the responsibility for accountability squarely on the city council, not on the community process. And this appears to be something of a compromise whereby as part of the initial community process and grant agreement, the stage gate would be in place. Am I interpreting that correctly or not? Where in the process does this happen?
Mayor Wheeler, in some ways, I'd love to parse this out. This was, we will speak to some of those responses to the audit in the next slides or how we're going to work through those responses. I think this was really focused on the fact that, we had a grant that we had to rescind in December. And part of that is a function of that. It's that we grant to newer organizations that are entering the space. And how do we address that risk, which is unique to PSF, given the work that we are doing to build capacity here? And so some of those other pieces, Mayor Wheeler, that you're speaking to are going to be taking place over the coming months. And the next set of slides will speak to that. And I almost want you to see that and ask this question. And I'll think through whether you feel like you see a place for that discussion.
All right. Thanks, Sam. And I just want to, I want to acknowledge and appreciate this is a big step forward in terms of oversight and accountability. And I'm really happy to see that there. Commissioner Ryan also has a question or a comment.
You're muted, Commissioner Ryan. You may be muted. Commissioner
Ryan, are you muted?
I'm that person. Sorry about that. Hey, Sam, first of all, thank you for being here. It's always wonderful to see you. I think I might be too early to raise my hand. You have more slides to go over, correct? About this particular topic?
Not this review, this additional review process, but what's to come in the coming months around recommended changes to the program more holistically.
Okay, just I guess my 2 cents since we're here. First of all, thank you for building an innovative program that is new and different, not just to local market, but across the country. So that's a brave thing for a leader to do. I appreciate you. And I know that when we're building something that's new and it's innovation, it's messy. And so I think all that we can do is fail forward. I really mean that statement, failing forward, because all great leaders and entrepreneurs and anything innovative has, you have to have the courage to admit where you fall down and then learn from it and get right back up. So I just think this is a part of the journey. So I just wanted to say that, first of all. So when I look at what I've been experiencing from what I've read and from what I've gathered, and then in this presentation, I think it's in this, but I just want to make sure some of the things I've been thinking about. And I do this from somebody that was in the nonprofit sector for a few decades and raised a lot of money and then ran an organization. And so you have some life experience that makes you think you know a little bit about this topic. So that's where I come from. What one? I think number 2 might address it, Sam, but when I've been asked about some of the challenges that have happened in the early days, one thing I've noticed is I can't tell, and maybe it's a number 2, is that if an organization's operational budget is a certain number, say $1 million, and then they get a grant that's much, much bigger than that, they might not have the infrastructure to manage that big of a grant. Would you say there's some truth to that statement?
Without a doubt, Commissioner Ryan, yes.
Yeah, and so I found that is part of the process where your team and the team that oversees the grant, the awards, do you meet with the staff leader, the staff executive, the board leadership, and do you look at like the last 3 years of financials? Okay, and then the audit statement as well, the audit of that organization, not the audit of the program we're talking about at the city, but the audit of actually the organizations.
Their financial statements are audited. It's not every organization will have independently audited. They'll have varying degrees of.
Right, and I also want to say that it's great that we're helping birth some organizations, which is just, I think what I want to get, my point that I want to deliver is incremental is good, and it allows someone to build. You know, we were talking about small businesses earlier. A lot of big businesses start out as small businesses. And so it's an incremental process as you grow. And seldom is it as explosive as I think some people might fantasize about. And so I just want to just put my 2 cents in about that, and wanted to just have some dialogue with you. And thank you for the building. And I think the other one I wanted to point out is to offer this, and it could be, you've already considered this, and that is, we don't want an organization to just be dependent on us for all their revenues. So is there a part of the guidance that you're receiving and the overview and evaluation, are we connected to some matching? So the city will give the second payment if in fact the organization is getting revenue streams from some other sources, which include philanthropy.
Commissioner Ryan, yes. In different ways, we evaluate leverage. Now, some projects come in with it, and that's a core part of it. We don't disperse our funds until we see that leverage realized or become actualized, right? That other funding. So they'll say, we've got this other funding in the works, and so we don't disperse our funding until that other funding comes to the table. So
okay, so it does. There is a trigger when they reach that, then we release. Okay, good. I didn't know that, and thank you for sharing that. I didn't have a briefing beforehand, so I'm probably asking some questions I would have asked if we had time to do the briefing. So that was just one that's been on my brain for a while. And I'll look at my little notes here. It was really about the revenue sources and matching. And I think that's it. I just want to make sure I got my voice in on the record about such topics. And thank you again for doing this work and for the building that you're doing.
Commissioner Hardesty, then Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sam. Yeah, apparently we're not going to let you get to your presentation, so we'll just put it all out there now. I want to start by saying I could not be prouder of the work that you've done, Sam, in building this program from the ground up. I cannot think of a better leader that would have been more thoughtful, more intentional, and than you. And so I want to start my conversation by really appreciating how you've been able to stay focused with all the outside pressures that you've had on you. The situation with the grantee was a very unfortunate situation, but I applaud the fact that once it became clear, decisive action was taken. I want to remind some of my newer colleagues because, it's like I feel so old. I feel like Commissioner Fritz and Commissioner Fish when I first got here, and they would start all their conversations. As a senior council member, I think it's important to remember the history. This was a grassroots effort by organizations led by Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other people of color that was taken to voters and passed overwhelmingly with a 60+% margin. This is once again an innovation created from the ground up by scratch. Even our financial director estimated that the resources annually would be somewhere between 35 and 45 million a year. We now know that we're going to get significantly more resources, but again, that's not because of anything we did. It is because of the wealth that has been created by corporations that make $1 billion or more nationally and $1 million or more locally. I think it's important that the record continues to remind people that the people who took to the streets to get this ballot measure qualified and to educate voters were the people who continue to be left out of the economic engine of the city of Portland. And it is our BIPOC communities, which is why the ballot measure puts them in the lead of figuring out how we're going to invest in those communities that continue to be left behind. I am appreciative that you have taken the auditor's report very intentionally. And I know that as this program continues to grow, as it continues to become institutionalized, we will be seeing some incredible results. And so I just wanted to take a moment to really appreciate how far we've come in 2 years with all the crises that the city has faced and all the obstacles of these small community-based organizations who, for the very first time, have an opportunity to lead around climate mitigation. And so I just wanted to put that on the record. I just wanted to say thank you, Sam. You've built an incredible team. And I want to thank Commissioner Rubio because from the day she showed up, her and I have been committed to ensuring this program will be successful. And I have every confidence it will be. So thanks.
Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you. And I want to just clarify too for my colleagues and for the public that, and Commissioner Ryan, I know you haven't been briefed and you'll probably hear this when you're briefed too, but want to just remind folks that over the course of 2.5+ years, the PSEF committee and the staff have been consulting with numerous foundations, financial institutions, philanthropic professionals, nonprofit leaders. So there are decades of experience that have gone into the development and consultation of this program. So this is not a program that has just in isolation created itself. This has been in consultation over many years with many professionals and experienced leaders. So I thought it was worth just stating for context so that folks didn't need to ask those questions or were wondering. And so just moving forward, I would just suggest too that we let Sam get through his presentation and then we can ask these questions at the end too, so that we can make sure some of your questions may be answered. So Sam, back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. So I'm going to go back 2 slides so it orients you all real quick. So we're on really the step 1. So I'm going to move you through step 2, which is going to be, you're going to have other questions out and we're moving there next. And then we'll go to step 3, which is really the main thing we're here for today. Okay. So moving into really the program update. So this next set of slides, I'm going to walk you through a high-level overview of the goals, work plans, and options that staff are evaluating as part of our work to bring program improvement recommendations to the City Council this fall. As you know from the outset, we've maintained a high fidelity to our code, which came from the ballot measure passed by so many folks. But as you'll see, we're at a perfect point to consider strategic program improvements, and I'm going to talk about what those aims are. And just want to appreciate our support and work with Commissioner Rubio's office in this process. Goal number 1 is to identify changes to enable accelerated funding of carbon reduction projects that are in alignment with the ballot measure intent. Goal number 2 of the program update process is going to be to draw clear and more relevant connections between the program, PSEF, and the city's carbon reduction goals. The city's carbon reduction goals are, if I describe, like all the way up here, And the reality is PSEF is never on its own going to meet those goals because we are still, while significant, a drop in the bucket given the work we need to do. And so we're going to be working on less amorphous goals all the way up here and more tangible PSEF relevant goals. Goal 3 is going to be addressing staff and committee identified needs. A lot of this is about staffing, but also a range of just housekeeping things that need to be done with the code. And then goal 4 is going to be addressing remaining audit recommendations that are not captured in goals 1, 2, and 3. And so as we think about really goal 1, and that's where I'm going to focus because accelerating funding, thinking through the options and considerations to accelerate funding for carbon reduction and community benefit projects will support meeting our other goals. And so the things that we are working through, and we're going to brief you all in the months to come, is going to be targeted program solicitation, things like the heat response program, additional program delivery models, and whether that means, program delivery contractors. So this is who implements the projects, gets the funding and implements them. Right now it is nonprofits, but looking at in certain instances where do we have program delivery contractors, is there public sector implementation? If and where those exist, is there a capped declining public sector funding set aside for that? What does the community collaboration approach look like in those instances where something really, in the description of the way I described it, there are things that are really squarely in the jurisdiction of a public sector or the government sector, whether that's the city or other entity. What does that look like? What does community collaboration look like? We'll be talking about increased staffing and then additional funding areas, notably transportation decarbonization, which does not exist as a named funding area, as well as capacity building, which is one of the areas of recommendations to more explicitly address and call out capacity building from the audit recommendations. So in this next slide, what you're going to see is really just to start conceptualizing one possible outcome of how this is going to really manifest, so you can get a sense for what things are going to start to play out. And as you see, I'll move to this. And so just to ground folks thinking on this first lowest step really is the foundation of what we've been designed around. It is the core of what we do. It's the core of what we've been doing. It's our community initiated projects. These are our annual solicitations, $40 to $60 million, where we anticipate probably average grant size of $1.5 million, 3-year average duration, award 40 grants annually. On any given time in our portfolio of grants under management, about 120 to 140 grants. And we'd have potentially 5 project managers managing 25 grants at a given time. Gives you a sense for this is the core, this is the foundation of what PSEF was designed around. And yet because of some of those other changes, we're starting to look at these other 2 steps. Step 2, really, this next step up is where we'd be looking at strategic solicitation. This is where, to describe, we have areas, funding areas, that may need a targeted focus, whether this is affordable housing, whether it's single family housing, tree planting in East Portland and Heat Island areas, things that are going to need not a one-time focus, but a multi-decade focus. And I think we can confidently say that about our investments in single family, our investments in tree planting, our investments in multifamily housing stuff. And so that's where you would see, as opposed to an annual solicitation, something on the realm of every 5-year solicitation for programs that are for programs that would be addressing examples here, affordable housing, multifamily retrofit, energy upgrades. We expect that could be in the realm of every 10 years, 5 to 10 years, 200 to 250 million. Tree planting in East Portland and Heat Island areas, 30 to 50 million over a 10-year period. Efficiency and resiliency improvements on publicly owned and community buildings. This is about creating more community centers and refuges and making sure that we have those resilient centers, solar powered, battery backup, and so forth, so that they can operate those, so that we can have those in the community. And this last really tier is where you have response to solicitations. This is to acknowledge the fact that there are new policies, new community priorities that surface up over time. And where that falls into alignment with PSEF, we're going to need to create an avenue for those, whether those are transformative community investments or things that align with a policy priority that is being advocated by community that squarely aligns with reducing greenhouse gas emissions and advancing community benefit. So it gives you a sense for how we're starting to think about what that evolution would be looking like. And as far as our steps in order to bring the changes to enable that future program update, we are working through refining the scope options and drafting a proposal to accelerate funding and address staff recommendations, the audit recommendations, and working on that over the next several weeks. We're going to be refining that with stakeholder groups, in May and June, bringing that ultimately to the PSEF committee for their review and deliberation, public comment, and then we will ultimately refine that and bring that to you all for your review and deliberation. And that's where we'll get into some of the other areas of the audit recommendations that you all have seen, with the anticipation that we bring that to you all in fall of this year. And so we've been busy, we've been busy listening to the community, developing community responsive program. As you can see, we continue to be busy taking our learnings to date into PSEF's next phase of evolution. It's both an exciting time to do this work and an urgent and critical time. There's so much more I can say, but our next discussion here that I'm going to pass off is going to touch on just one of those efforts that's responsive to this moment. And so as our summer heat season approaches, I'm excited to share with you our progression on our heat response program, including the ordinance before you today. James Valdez on the PSEF team manages the PSEF heat response program, and will provide a brief update on the program. So what's happened to date, specific information, the ordinance before you that you would allocate funding for. And so unless we can get to maybe the end, I'm going to turn it over to James so we can make sure we cover that content and then come to your questions.
Thank you, Sam and Director Oliveira. Mayor Wheeler, commissioners, for the record, my name is James Valdez, and I'm the Organizational Development and Policy Manager for the Portland Clean Energy Fund, and I'm also working as the project manager for the Heat Response Program. The Heat Response Program is eager to work with this initial cohort of community distribution partners who will be responsible for delivering and installing efficient cooling units into the homes of vulnerable Portlanders, which is the focus of the ordinance in front of you today. I'll go ahead and, Sam, go to the next slide. So I'll provide a brief summary of the program development to date. You see the ordinance content here. And as we developed this program in the summer and fall of last year, we developed it with 5 goals in mind. And so the first was really to ensure that we're reducing heat-related risk to vulnerable populations by getting out efficient units that provide cooling to people's homes, and prioritizing those who are seniors among PSEF priority populations, recognizing that in particular, seniors were part of the people who tragically lost their lives during the June 2021 heat wave. We're also ensuring that we use the PSEF guiding principles in design and deployment, as well as, of course, the PSEF code. We are seeking to begin distribution in May or June of 2022. We're now looking at June of 2022, with implementation taking place over a period of up to 5 years and distributing up to 15,000 of these heat pump cooling units. As we do this, we're seeking to promote energy efficient installation and use, and recognizing that the use of these devices will potentially increase people's electricity, that we want to connect people with programs to lower their energy bills. And as we roll out this program, we also want to ensure that these are products that have a long product life and are efficient in the way they operate and are usable to the people that receive them. And go ahead and next slide. So I'll provide a brief overview and share some details about how the PSEF Heat Response Program will operate. In this program, there's a few distinct roles and functions, as you see here on the slide. Last year, the program solicited proposals from nonprofit organizations to play one of 2 roles. The 2 roles were a single equipment purchasing partner, or EPP, to coordinate the centralized purchase of 15,000 heat pump cooling units over the 5-year period, to coordinate the equipment and delivery of that to the contracted community distribution partners, and provide logistics, information, and technical assistance. We then had a solicitation for a number of nonprofit community distribution partners, which I'll refer to as CDPs throughout this, to distribute and install the portable heat pump cooling equipment to vulnerable Portlanders provide information about how to use the devices, and provide additional services such as basic weatherization. The fall 2021 request for proposal process helped us select that equipment purchasing partner. And following City Council action in January of 2022, Earth Advantage was awarded the grant to serve that role of the EPP. And we've been working with them to build the infrastructure, including placing orders for energy efficient cooling equipment for the heat response program. Then the CDPs will identify the needy households, schedule installation of the cooling units in people's homes, transport and install the units. And the CDP application process that we went through sorted the applicants into two types of organizations: those that provided housing, and then non-housing community-based organizations, or CBOs. Just wanted to be clear about the way that this program works. PSEF and the City of Portland will not directly be selecting or registering recipients of these cooling units. The CDPs were reviewed and recommended because they serve priority communities in Portland, and they'll be identifying vulnerable low-income recipients through the communities they serve. For example, housing providers will serve the households in the properties that they manage, whether these are multifamily or other types of housing. CBOs do have the potential to serve members of the broader community that are within their service area. And we at PSEF recognize that overall there will be much more demand than available units in this program, especially in the first season of distribution. And that is just the reality that we're in as we launch this program and ramp up. As you see on the right, low-income households will be the recipients of these life-saving cooling devices, with particular attention towards the elderly, those who are living alone, and people who have medical conditions. All of these groups were particularly vulnerable to heat emergency, similar to what we experienced in June of 2021. We've also been looking at the data and information from the Multnomah County Health Department in evaluating this program and the risks. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So I want to share a little bit more about where we are in the program and what this equipment will look like. So as I mentioned, from January to the present, we've been working with Earth Advantage and their staff to identify and purchase the most energy efficient equipment available on the market to meet the needs of the heat response program. We also, through this process, reached out to prospective community distribution partners to better understand their equipment needs and what worked for them and their preferences. We will be focusing the majority of this program on distributing energy efficient portable heat pump units. Those are the ones that you see on the left. These devices are roughly the size of a mini fridge. They have wheels that can be moved around as needed. They have a hose that connects through ducting to a window that is sealed. And they provide both cooling in the summertime as well as heating in the fall and winter. However, in some situations and in feedback with the CDPs, they've indicated the need for different equipment, and we will be supplying some with efficient in-window AC units, which are more the traditional AC units that you might be familiar with. As you can imagine, given the place we're in the pandemic and global situation, all of this equipment is in high demand, and the global disruptions in supply chains, materials, and shipping has made all of this procurement particularly challenging. But we are excited to share that Earth Advantage has been able to work with multiple vendors to secure the over 3,000 units for distribution this summer that we've planned for, and that these are on their way to Portland in the coming weeks. And you can see the allocation of each type with about 2,600 of the portable units ordered and about 350 window units. And we planned for a total of about 3,000 cooling units this summer, which we're able to meet. And Earth Advantage has pathways to secure even greater quantities for future years. In this, they've worked with multiple vendors and have different warehouses throughout the city that these are arriving at. In addition to Earth Advantage ordering some of the most efficient equipment available in each of these different product classes, we're really also happy to report that just last week, our local energy utility, Portland General Electric, launched a new income qualified bill discount program for low-income customers. And we should be spreading the word broadly about this new opportunity. This program provides between a 15 to 25% reduction in electricity costs for low-income households. And we plan to use the cooling equipment distribution as an opportunity to educate vulnerable households about this program that can reduce their energy costs, not just throughout the summer, but year-round. And go ahead and go to the next slide, Sam. So as we move towards talking about the CDPs, I want to just provide a brief timeline of the process and where we are. So the community distribution partner RFP was open for approximately 6 weeks from October 19th to November 30th, 2021. During that time, we as staff hosted informational sessions and answered a number of questions from organizations who were interested in playing this critical role. In the months following, from December to March 2022, PSEP staff evaluated the applications for eligibility. We asked applicants to respond to additional follow-up questions and applied the additional review process steps that Sam had outlined in the earlier presentation. We also communicated a fixed cost approach that we're using to applicants, which I'll describe that in a couple slides. 3-person scoring panel evaluated the applicants, and 7 participating organizations were recommended to fill the role in the initial cohort of community distribution partners. Throughout all of this time, staff have also been working with Earth Advantage to define the equipment specifications, providing guidance on how much to order and what to order, and to get the pieces of the program and grant infrastructure in place to launch this program. On April 7th, 2022, PSEP Grant Committee approved the selection of the CDPs, and we're now before you today on April 27th, 2022, for your consideration of the proposal that will allocate funding to organizations to serve this role. As the summer is fast approaching and with equipment on the way, we plan to begin installations in June, and those will then take place throughout the summer. Moving forward in the deployment of these units, we will also report regularly to the PSEP committee and to you, City Council, on the impact and progress of the heat response program. So on to the next slide, the reveal of sorts. On behalf of the PSEP committee, I'm happy to announce the selection of 7 community distribution partners for the initial launch of the PSEP heat response program. These 7 organizations, their service approach and the number of units that they requested are itemized on the slide, but I'll review a few highlights with you right now. So the first 4 of these are housing providers, and then the last 3 are what we're considering CBOs. So the first, the Central City Concern, and then they've identified 8 low-income family properties located in all quadrants of Portland where they'll be doing installations. Northwest Housing Alternatives has 12 multifamily buildings throughout the city of Portland where they will be doing installations. Also just wanted to note that another vulnerability in kind of heat is being on a 3rd floor or higher of a multifamily building. So it's critical that we have an approach that can meet the need of some of these housing providers. PCRI, or Portland Community Reinvestments Initiatives, will be focusing their distribution on single family and multifamily housing rental properties, primarily in North and Northeast Portland. And Reach CDC, as the 4th housing provider, will be focusing on serving low-income seniors and disabled homeowners throughout Portland. The African American Alliance of Homeownership will be serving households, primarily low-income homeowners, in their network throughout Portland. And the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon, APANO, will be focusing on serving elderly, people with disabilities, and immigrant populations, largely in East Portland. Verde, the 7th of the cohort, will be focusing on low-income Northeast Portland households, and in particular, mobile homes or mobile home parks that are located throughout Portland, not just in Northeast. So as you can see, all of these organizations serve critical community needs and have approaches that focus on the most vulnerable Portlanders, including culturally specific organizations. So this can ensure broad and equitable deployment of equipment throughout our city. And all of these are organizations that have a long track record and history of connecting with and serving priority communities. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Sam. So at the same time, we recognize, and I would note at the bottom of that slide, there was a list of and totaling of the total number of units, the 7,826. We recognize that there's a gap between that number and that the initial CDPs have capacity to distribute and install, and the 15,000 unit 5-year goal of the program. So we're planning a phased approach to bring on additional CDPs as we move forward and to ramp up this program over time. The initial focus this summer will be training the CDPs and getting the first round of equipment out in the community. We'll also be reaching out to additional housing providers, including some that had expressed interest in the program when we had the RFP open, but for a variety of reasons, including kind of internal capacity constraints, did not apply to the CDP RFP. So we intend to ramp up the purchasing of cooling units and distribution capacity significantly in the second year of the program. As we move forward in prioritizing the selection and opportunities for more CDPs, we'll first, as I mentioned, focus on additional nonprofit affordable housing providers. Then we'll also be seeking out additional nonprofit CBOs. Then, recognizing the linkage to health and medical vulnerability, we'll be reaching out to community health organizations. If we can't meet the overall capacity needs through those channels, then we'll also consider and reach out to for-profit direct installation contractors who can provide these services to vulnerable Portlanders. And now I want to walk through some of the budget details for the ordinance. Go ahead. So as I mentioned earlier, we developed a fixed cost approach for pricing and developing the budget. And first, I want to acknowledge that we're asking quite a bit of our CDPs. These CDPs will need to work to identify households, coordinate the time of installation with households for the staff or contractors that they're working with to deliver and install the units. They'll need to pick up the units from warehouses located in different parts of Portland and transport them to the home. Then they will unpack the units, install them, and certify the installation according to the guidelines that are provided by Earth Advantage and by us at PSEF, and provide the information to the recipient about how to efficiently use it. This all requires time and staffing in both the coordination and installation. We anticipate that 2 technicians will be utilized per installation, and these units weigh up to about 70 pounds, so moving them up and down stairs is a consideration. In addition, some of the CDPs will have the ability to provide additional services such as weatherization installation at the time of delivery or check-ins during heat events. So the CDPs will be compensated for their services on a fixed per unit cost approach. This approach was based on evaluation of the proposals that we received, breakdown of the average rates, and as well as a staff review of reasonable costs that were proposed by the applicants. So this structure also acknowledges a different staffing, ease of installation, logistics, and the travel required to provide the services, which is different between the 2 types of CDPs, both the housing providers and CBOs. So we've established a $250 per unit rate for housing providers and a $400 per unit rate to compensate the community-based organizations. These community-based organizations do have higher costs related to logistics, scheduling, and transportation, and providing these services than housing providers who generally already have ready access to the households that live on or in their properties or that they're connected with. This cost structure was communicated to the CDP applicants, and they were given the opportunity to decline participation if it didn't meet their needs. 2 applicants did decline to participate based on the rates provided. Then in making the allocation between the 2 types of CDPs, we looked at the ratio of requests that we received in the RFP and applied that to the program. And so we've allocated 5,000 units to housing providers and 10,000 units to the CBOs. We recognize that there's a much greater need for cooling out in the community and beyond just those who are living in units managed by nonprofit affordable housing providers. For example, people living in manufactured homes are at particular risk. And this approach also provides us some flexibility to adjust as we learn from the initial deployment. So as you see here, the budget amendment allocates $5.25 million for the installation services of the CDPs, and then $500,000 for additional energy efficiency and support services, and then a $575,000 contingency budget for the heat response program, recognizing that there might be unanticipated increases in equipment costs or other additional services that need to be provided. The total allocation for all of these elements combined is $6,325,000 over a total 5-year program, with the goal of installing 15,000 efficient cooling units into the homes of vulnerable low-income Portlanders. Then we have a couple more slides. So this slide then shows the budget allocation of the amendment in blue in context of the original grant award in green awarded to Earth Advantage, which includes $7 million for the purchase of this equipment and approximately $3 million for the management and logistics of the program over a 5-year term. And the funding for the CDP role will be managed by Earth Advantage, who will compensate and contract with the CDPs based on the successful installation of the units and the provision of additional services. And today we're asking you to consider the allocation of funding, which pays for the services of the CDPs over the term of the program. And in conclusion, I really thank you for your time. We look forward to being able to launch this much needed program out into the community. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll pass it back to Sam.
James. So I know we've kind of gotten you to the end. So this is just a reminder, the action before you today is certainly this ordinance that around our community distribution partners, so we can continue the good work and begin getting these units into vulnerable households. However, we will be coming back to you all in summer, later this summer, to bring an ordinance to approve our second round of awards. And you just heard a little bit ago what additional review we've been working through. And so we will walk you through that in more detail then. And then later this fall, we will come back in front of you all to talk about the program updates and structural improvement recommendations. So there's a lot there, and turn it back to Mayor Yu as well as Commissioner Rubio.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for the thorough presentation. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. I think it was Jamie. Is it James or Jamie?
I go by James. Thanks.
James. Okay, James. I thought it was you that said that there was a utility that was going to give low-income discounts. Did they tell you what low-income meant to them? Because I suspect that their idea of low-income discount and mine may be radically different.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner Hardesty. And so, yes, there was a bill that passed in 2021 that authorized utilities to give income differentiated rates to customers. And so that the first program to launch is that of Portland General Electric, who just went live with that last week. And I can't speak in detail to their program, but it is a tiered approach that actually has a couple different discount levels based on the income qualification. And so I really can't speak to the details, but it provides up to 25% reduction of monthly utility bills.
Thank you. I guess I'll have to look that up myself, because again, a lot of people come to us saying low income and they're not even close to low income, right? So I just want to know, who does that cover? And is it going to cover our most vulnerable community members or not? But I'll do my own research. Thank you. Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Commissioner Mapps, then Commissioner Ryan.
First, thanks, Sam and James, for the presentation today. I just have a couple of questions specifically on the implementation of the heat response program. Let's start with the CBOs. How and when does reimbursement work for the CBOs? When do those folks get paid? Is it after they install the heat pumps? Is it before?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Mapps. I can answer that. The approach that we're using is that Earth Advantage would compensate the community distribution partners upon successful installation and verification of that installation. And they have without going into too much detail, they have a project management portal that the CBOs or that the CDPs will enter the information into, and also take a picture of the successful installation, along with registering the serial number and collecting information from the recipient.
Great. That's good to hear. And what does installation mean for a heat pump, which is one of those kind of self-contained units that looks like a refrigerator? Do they actually install it, or are they just delivering it to your home?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And that's a good one. And we looked at this complete installation approach that does put it into somebody's home, unpacks the unit. Usually these portable heat pumps have a little kind of baffle that goes into the window and has to be sealed.
Yep.
Also, you need to ensure that the window is secure. So it sometimes does take a couple screws or some hardware. And in all of that, we want to ensure that our most vulnerable Portlanders, that this is focused on particularly elderly people who might be living alone or have disabilities, that we can provide a kind of comprehensive service for them. So that does include delivery, as well as unpacking it all, installing it, and then also delivering information about how to use the unit. There's different kind of features of some of these. Some of these have remotes. Some of them will just have buttons on the unit. And so there'll be education about how to both use it efficiently and how to make sure that it's working, as well as follow-up service of where to call if they're having issues.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so to complete a project, it's not just delivery, it's not done and you don't get compensated until it's actually installed in the window and kind of screwed in?
Correct, yes.
Can you help me think about this potential issue? Are we worried about, or how should I think about the possibility of some of these units wandering off to different sites? Are we concerned about them staying in place, or should I not worry about that? Or I just don't even know how to begin to think about the potential for some of these units to not stay where they were originally installed.
Commissioner, I really can't tell you how to think about something like that.
Okay.
But I can tell you that we have considered this approach in a couple different ways. With housing providers may choose to manage and kind of have an inventory of units themselves that is a fleet that then they are deploying as needed.
Yeah.
And so that will be up to each housing provider to determine what approach works for them. However, for the CBOs, these units are going to identify vulnerable recipients, and that person might move. They might be living in an apartment that a few months from now they unfortunately can no longer afford and have to move somewhere else. And so in that situation, we would anticipate that the vulnerable person take that unit with them. And so, that would just depend, I guess, on the individual situation of the person. But for housing providers, we are giving the option for them to manage a fleet of these units in their buildings, which is a little bit different. Does that help answer?
Yeah, it does. And thank you for this clarification. I'll lower my hand. I may raise it later.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Sam and James. Here I am asking some questions to understand a little bit. So first of all, this is great. I'm excited. I just want to understand the numbers. So you made it really clear that 3K basically is the amount of investment that we're putting out this year. And then when you showed the two different types of community providers, thank goodness you're tapping into that, it totaled a different number, which was at least over double that. And then you explain that this is because it's a long-term program that will go on to 15. Am I tracking so far a little bit of this? Okay. So what I would love for my little brain at least is to see for this summer to have some sort of parallel apples and apples alignment, if you will, between the 3K-ish and then the responsibility of those 3K-ish investments to go out with those providers. Does that make sense? Because I felt like you did phase one here, and then here you did phase one and kind of phase two-ish. That's my feedback, at least for me, when I looked at the data. Did that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
But you could tell me that's really a ridiculous statement. I mean, I'm okay with that. Just tell me what you think.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. We can certainly provide more clarity. The 3,000 units is what we're seeking to distribute and have placed orders for in terms of the number of units, not dollars, but 3,000.
Thank you. That was great.
3,000 units that are ordered, or slightly more than 3,000 for this summer. And then the budget that is proposed. And
so one was the quantity and the other one was the dollars. So that's the discrepancy.
Correct. We are.
See, that's why we have conversations. Because when I looked at it very quickly as the slides were moving, I didn't notice that. So now it makes more sense. I thought you were leading into phase 2 and 3 with the second slide.
No, and just to clarify, the budget allocation is for the entirety of the 5-year 15,000 unit program. But I provided a brief update about where we're at right now, which is that we have our anticipated 3,000 units ordered, and basically they're on their way to Portland.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And that is what we anticipated as at the beginning of what we would be able to deliver for this first summer of the program.
And James, you probably said this, but if you could just say it again, the distinction between the rates, you had a housing provider rate, and then you had the nonprofit that are more, that don't really have units in the same way. And I assume it's because the housing provider has people skilled at ready that can help do this type of work, but I don't want to make up a story. Did you say that earlier on why there's a difference between the two?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ryan. I would say when we looked at the proposals and the cost provided, there's a few different factors.
Okay.
You're certainly correct that a lot of housing providers have a maintenance staff that already work for them and make improvements on the properties that they manage. And so there are some efficiencies in using those staff. And also just the realities of efficiencies for housing providers and identifying people that they already have information about and they know where they live. And, the housing stock is more likely to be similar within a given building. The installation is going to be a little bit easier potentially. Whereas the community.
And then the metrics.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you finish. Sorry about that. There was a Zoom delay. Yeah.
Oh, whereas the community-based installations, we anticipate will have more costs involved in the transportation of units and picking them up, moving them around the city, as well as each building that they're installing it, and it might be a little bit different. Some might be apartments, some might be single-family homes, some might be manufactured homes. And so there's greater complexity for the community-based organizations in coordinating, scheduling, and transporting the units to people's homes.
And we'll be able to review after the first year if these rates were the right rates. I mean, I know that you did the best you could, so that'll be interesting when you come back to, because I noticed that you mentioned 2 providers rejected this grant, if you will, correct? They didn't want to participate. Okay. And it could have been because, well, one, it's because when you're a nonprofit, you have your plan for the year, and it's not always easy to add something unless it's completely aligned with your mission and you know that it will pencil out. So, so thank you for hustling and doing that. There are a couple that to me were obviously missing, but I don't want, I'll find out more about that offline. And I think the third, because I think everyone that's been around living in these parts for a while, we always say summer starts about a week after 4th of July. And obviously the heat dome last year made us all a fool when it comes to that. So I'm going to ask an obvious question. So what is your anticipation in terms of delivery? Because now I'm thinking that, well, who knows what we think anymore? I guess winter goes to April 11th and summer starts in June now. Who knows what's happening? But what are you thinking about in terms of the implementation?
Yeah, thank you. And it is definitely hard to know with this climate chaos that we're in exactly what the summer will bring. We anticipate being able to start installations in June, but certainly not all 3,000. And so we really do hope that we don't have a early June heat event the way, or late June heat event the way that we did last year. And we'll just have to adjust to the realities of the summer as we roll out the program.
And then finally, will there be, and this will be my last one, will there be a learning community with these wonderful partners that are going to be a part of this? So in the first 2 weeks, there could be a little huddle amongst them so they can learn what's working and what's not. That would help the efficiency, right?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ryan. We're definitely approaching this as kind of a cohort model where the housing providers will be in very close communication with each other and, the rollout and learning from each other, and also the CBOs. And so, we see lots of opportunities. We know we're going to be learning a lot as we roll this out.
Well, thank you both for your leadership and your responsiveness to something that we've now learned last summer or last late June is so necessary in terms of the services that we provide for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Mapps.
If I understand it correctly, we are about to vote on a 5-year contract. Is there going to be some point, maybe in the fall, where you come back and provide us with a report on how things went over the summer?
Let me chime in there. I think Commissioner Knox, I know you've asked for this prior, you asked for quarterly reports. I think that fits in line with that. I know that we can certainly bring that as part of, so we will work with Commissioner Rubio's office and connect with you all and figure out how we do that. But yes, we can do that. And we've already internally planned on sort of that end of season. How do we think through the next season and we prepare for that and bring on new community distribution partners. So that's in line with our work, and we'll figure out what's the most appropriate way to bring that to you all so we can actually do that.
Great, thanks, Sam. I would appreciate that.
Very good. Keelan, do we have any testimony on this first reading?
No one signed up.
All right, very good. So I'm going to put a question out there because I'd love to receive some written testimony on this. I appreciate Sam and James' thoughtfulness in terms of the approach here, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And I appreciate the oversight and accountability mechanisms you put into place. The only part of this that I still have questions about is really the amounts attached to installation. I have no basis for judging whether or not $400 or $250 is the right amount. And you made a good case that there's transportation involved, there's installing the units, there's educating people on how to make those units work. And I'd just like to know more about whether that's the right number, because collectively that adds up to literally millions of dollars. And I want to make sure that that number is based on some reality. So if there's somebody out there who does this kind of work, who could steer us towards some information, I'd be most appreciative of that. And then I think you answered this question when you were answering Commissioner Mapp's question. I think, James, you said that when a unit is installed, it's still the property of the CBO. Did I hear that correctly? Whose property is it?
Yes, Mayor Wheeler, thank you for the clarifying question. And no, the approach that we're using is that the default is that it belongs to the recipient, that the person receiving the unit effectively owns it. However, for housing providers, we've created a different pathway if they choose to take it, where they could be the owners and managers of the equipment themselves.
All right, because that would address a potential concern, which is if you have a particular location, you install them in the location, the tenants move on to bigger and better, and God bless them. But then you have that unit without a heat pump or an air conditioner. And so it sounds like you're leaving that flexibility up to the CBO to make that determination.
Correct, yes.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Mayor, can I jump in here just for a clarification? So there are two populations here. There are housing providers who will participate in this and get window units. And I get the impression those housing providers can basically own the units or opt into functionally owning the units. And then it seems like we have a second population, which are probably low-income folks, BIPOC folks who live in whatever situation they live in. And I got the impression that population, we're essentially giving the unit to them. It's not attached to the apartment or the trailer that they're renting. Is that correct?
Thank you, Commissioner Matz. Yes, that is correct. And there is that distinction in the program, how we're treating housing providers slightly differently because they have different resources and the ability to manage equipment, whereas the CBOs, the community-based organizations that are not housing providers, will be delivering them to households who then will own the units effectively.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And if I can just chime in real quick, Mayor, and add, it's, you know, these units are definitely spec'd in some, to the extent that they can be. You know, there's generally two to that situation. So they're designed, they're outfitted to that place, and when we verify the installation, they're geolocated. We're verifying it's installed in this household and so forth. So there is that. But yes, I think if you're getting at that unit, that household owns that unit. So if they wanted to afterwards take it, unplug it, and move it to their next household, they could.
And Sam, can I promise I'm going to let people go after this. Can I ask, are we buying basically one type of heat pump and one type of window unit? So or are they going to cover a whole bunch of different brands?
Commissioner Maps, I'm happy to answer that. Earth Advantage has selected the most efficient equipment available in a few different product categories, including situations that are for portable units where it's cooling maybe just a bedroom, and then also larger units that are more suitable for like a living room. And so there's a few different kind of BTU output approaches that also are correlated to the electrical load. And so there'll be a need to identify what is the best unit for the best space. And so we have that flexibility among the portfolio of units that Earth Advantage has specified, as well as some window units as well for a few housing providers that indicated that they wanted window units instead of the portable ones.
Okay, so a limited, like 6 or 7 different brands. Yeah. Okay, great.
Is there a consistent standard of recipient? Can anybody apply for a heat pump or an air conditioner? Is it done by individual nonprofits and housing providers? Is there a consistent set of acceptance standards? How does this actually work? How does one end up getting a heat pump or an air conditioner?
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. So we are establishing the guidelines that then the CDPs will implement, that the basic standards that they will need to be low income. And then the prioritization or other factors that the CDP will be able to use to identify a household would be elderly people, people living alone, people with medical conditions. And so the CDPs themselves will be the ones who are registering and identifying which households receive the units, not the city of Portland directly.
And not to be indelicate, but to Commissioner Mapp's question, I assume that there would be some agreement that they would continue to use the heat pump or the air conditioner themselves.
Mayor Wheeler, I think I understand your question.
Let me just be blunt and undiplomatic. These are valuable assets and they'll become more valuable in the summer. What do we do to prevent people from turning them for cash? And I hate to sound cynical, but you know, with any program we do, there's always some percentage of people who aren't. You know, is there anything we can do to prevent that?
I would say that, you know, if another vulnerable family member in a household with somebody who's elderly is using the unit, that's probably okay. But you're kind of presenting a different type of question. We're not geolocating them in terms of tracking them in any way. We're not putting that. So yeah,
I think Mayor Wheeler, I think I hear what you're saying, and maybe I'd love to follow back up with you all. I think I hear what you're saying, and this may be just a program detail that we still need to work with our community distribution partners in terms of that sort of affidavit affirmation that this unit will stay here or with this household. So I'd love to. I think it'd be best for us to frankly connect with our partners and figure out what's the best way to do that. But we hear what you're sharing, and that's.
Yeah, and believe me, I'm not proposing any big brother approach here, geolocating, or that's BS. And I don't think any of us want to get into that business. But it is a question I have, and we have this question with other city assets, and we don't necessarily do it on an individual basis. But for example, if a shopping cart goes missing from a supermarket and it turns up somewhere else, they know it's their shopping cart. That's sort of what I'm getting at. Is there some way we can identify these as being part of the program? Yeah. And if they show up somewhere else, we might know whether or not this program has leakage that would require us to course correct or do something differently in terms of accountability.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, to answer that specific question, yes, we will be tracking the serial numbers of every unit that's delivered. And so we will have a database of exactly which unit is delivered.
Great.
And where it goes, as well as a prominently kind of displayed sticker saying it's a part of the program, partially so that people can receive assistance if the unit isn't working for some reason. And so,
yeah, and by the way, they never do work exactly the way they're supposed to. I had one of those heat pumps, and it was a temperamental little bugger. So I think that's a great idea and good customer service and great follow-up. And I appreciate your answer. Commissioner Rubio had a question.
Thank you. And it's more of a comment to an answer to you, Mayor, that in terms of the distribution partners, I think one of the benefits of working with community-based organizations that already have high volume client or participant lists these are folks that they probably are working with for many different kinds of programs anyway. So they'll know these folks and they'll have a relationship there already. So, I mean, we can't control for everyone, but I think it's safe to say that's why we engage with community trusted partners for these very reasons. So if that's helpful at all.
Yeah, that makes great sense. And I appreciate that. Good. And Keelan, I may have already asked you, do we have any public testimony on this?
No one signed up.
Okay, I did ask you that. Great. Colleagues, any further questions before we move this to second reading?
I would love to say something
today.
In closing.
Very thoughtful and thorough. I appreciate it very much. This is Commissioner Hardesty, it looks like you're about to say something.
Well, I see that Commissioner Rubio was trying to speak while you were talking.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to make some closing comments. There.
Go for it.
Okay. I wanted to thank Sam and James and the staff again for their work on moving this heat response program forward. It's a lot of work, as you've all seen, that went into this. And this program has a potential to save lives and improve living comfort and livability for those least able to withstand the warming summers. And I know that we all remember what those days felt like in June 2021. And so I'm really proud that PSEF is being responsive to a climate that may bring, record-breaking extreme heat in the span of 4 months. So I just want to remind my colleagues that PSEF committee saw this opportunity for PSEF to meet an urgent need and acted upon it. And in doing so, we're learning as we go so that we can do more of this and we can get better and better. The heat response program was not part of the regular RFP process, but you will see the product of the second round of RFPs in early summer. And I'm really confident that we'll be excited about the diversity of the kinds of project proposals that are being recommended for funding. Out of all of this, however, I hope that the committee continues to rise to meet the moment through community needs responsiveness. And addressing climate change will take every bit of creativity and partnership and innovation that we have in the city. And if any program can surface that partnership, it will be this one. It will be PSEF. So I'm also equally excited about the good work that staff have been doing to evaluate the structural improvements of this program and look forward to how that unfolds moving forward and look forward to the report in the fall. And also very thrilled that we're making progress on addressing the audit recommendations very directly. I know that you all have been working on this prior to the audit. So it feels really good that we're all in alignment and are seeing the same opportunities for work. So in closing, I just want to say thank you to Earth Advantage for being a continued partner in this work. And congratulations to the first cohort of community distribution partners. And then again, thanks to Director Oliveira, Sam, and James for this important presentation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio, and thank you to Sam and James. Great presentation, very thorough, and thank you for hanging in there to answer all of our questions. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading, and we are adjourned. We'll see you at 2 p.m.